The day Sophia Hale's driver didn't show up, she thought it was a mistake. It wasn't. Her billionaire sister had stripped away everything: the car, the credit cards, the private tutors, leaving her with nothing but a failing transcript and a bus route she'd never had to memorize. Standing at the curb in $1,000 shoes while classmates laughed from passing cars, Sophia finally understood what humiliation tasted like. She didn't know that across campus, a tired janitor named Ethan Cole was about to say 6 words that would dismantle everything she thought she knew about power. If you want to see how a spoiled heiress and a broken single father rebuild each other's lives from absolutely nothing, stay until the end and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The marble floors of Ridgeview Academy gleamed under morning light like they were trying too hard. Everything here did. The lockers cost more than most people's cars. The cafeteria served sushi that actually tasted good. Even the trash cans were designer, sleek steel things that probably had their own marketing campaigns. Sophia Hale leaned against her locker, scrolling through her phone with the kind of bored precision that came from having nothing urgent to care about. Around her, the hallway buzzed with the usual chaos: kids shouting about last night's party, someone's Porsche getting keyed, drama that would be forgotten by lunch. "Did you finish the essay?" her friend Madison asked, appearing beside her with coffee that cost $12. Sophia didn't look up. "What essay?" "The one due today, for Kingston's class." "I'll get an extension." "Again?" "Again." Sophia shrugged, pocketing her phone. "It's not like he'll actually fail me." Madison laughed, but there was something uncertain in it. "I don't know. He's been pretty strict lately. He teaches at Ridgeview. He knows who signs the donation checks." That wasn't arrogance. That was just reality. Sophia had learned young that her last name opened doors, closed complaints, and bought second chances. Her older sister Vanessa ran Hale Industries with the kind of ruthless efficiency that made grown men nervous, and Ridgeview Academy's new science wing had her signature all over the dedication plaque. Teachers didn't fail Hales. They smiled politely and adjusted the grading curve. Except this time, they didn't. The email arrived third period, CC'd to her sister. Subject: Academic Probation Notice. Sophia Hale. Sophia stared at her phone screen, reading the same paragraph 3 times like the words might rearrange themselves into something less catastrophic. Due to consecutive failing grades in English, literature, and history, Sophia Hale is hereby placed on academic probation effective immediately. Failure to achieve a minimum 2.5 GPA by semester's end will result in mandatory summer school and potential expulsion proceedings. Her stomach dropped. Expulsion. From Ridgeview. She tried calling Vanessa. Voicemail. Tried texting. Read receipts on, no response. That was worse than being ignored. It meant Vanessa had seen the email and was choosing silence. By lunch, everyone knew. Sophia walked into the cafeteria and felt the shift immediately. Conversations paused. Eyes tracked her movements. Someone whispered something that made their entire table laugh. She bought a salad she didn't want and sat alone near the windows, forcing herself to chew while her throat tried to close. Across the room, Madison waved apologetically, but didn't come over. No one did. When you smelled like failure at Ridgeview, people kept their distance like it was contagious. Her phone buzzed. "Vanessa, we need to talk. Tonight. My office." That was it. No punctuation softening the blow, no false warmth, just a summons. Sophia left her tray on the table and walked out before anyone could see her hands shaking. Goik. The Hale estate sat on 12 acres of manicured perfection 20 minutes outside the city. The house wasn't a house. It was a monument to money, all glass and steel and architectural awards. Inside, everything echoed. Footsteps, voices, the quiet hum of central air that never quite warmed the place up. Sophia found Vanessa in her home office, a room that looked like it belonged in a Fortune 500 headquarters instead of a residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. The desk was black granite. The chairs were uncomfortable on purpose. Vanessa didn't look up when Sophia entered. She was reading something on her tablet, her face composed in that controlled way she'd perfected years ago. At 30, Vanessa Hale looked like the kind of woman who'd been born in a boardroom. Sharp suit, sharper posture, hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. "Sit," Vanessa said. Sophia sat, Silence stretched between them. This was Vanessa's favorite power move, making people wait while she finished whatever task was apparently more important than they were. Sophia used to think it was impressive. Now it just felt mean. Finally, Vanessa set the tablet down and looked at her. Academic probation, she said flatly. Potential expulsion. Do you have any idea how that makes us look? I can fix it, Sophia said quickly. I'll get a tutor. You've had 3 tutors this year. You stopped showing up to sessions with all of them. Because they were boring. Vanessa's expression didn't shift, but something cold moved behind her eyes. This isn't about entertainment, Sophia. This is about the fact that you're 18 years old and failing basic high school courses while carrying our family name. I didn't ask to carry it. No. You just benefited from it your entire life. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. The car service, the credit cards, the private tutors you ignored, all of that stops today. Sophia's stomach clenched. What? You heard me. Starting tomorrow, you ride the public bus to school. You eat cafeteria food on the standard meal plan. No driver, no unlimited spending, no exceptions. You can't be serious. Overseas. I've never been less serious in my life. Vanessa's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. You want to act like money doesn't matter? Fine. Let's see how long that attitude lasts when you actually have to function without it. Sophia stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. You're punishing me for failing a few classes? I'm teaching you what failure actually costs. By humiliating me in front of the entire school? By showing you that your name alone won't save you. Vanessa stood too, and suddenly the 12 acres outside felt very small. I built this company from the ground up while you coasted on my work. I'm not watching you throw away every opportunity I fought to give you. I didn't ask for your opportunities. Then give them back. Vanessa walked to the door and opened it. Conversation over. The bus route is posted online. You leave at 6:45. Sophia wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, break something, make Vanessa feel even a fraction of what she was feeling. Instead, she walked past her sister in silence, down the echoing hallway, up the stairs to her room that suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cell. She locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing. Tomorrow, she'd have to ride the bus. Tomorrow, everyone would see. The alarm went off at 5:30, which Sophia had genuinely never experienced before. She'd heard of 5:30 in theory, understood it existed on clocks, but had never personally witnessed it from the waking side. She dressed in jeans and a sweater that cost more than most people's rent, then stared at her closet and realized everything she owned screamed money. The shoes, the jackets, even her backpack had a designer logo stitched into the leather. There was no hiding what she was. The bus stop sat 3 blocks from the estate's front gate, which meant Sophia had to walk. Her driver used to handle door-to-door service in under 4 minutes. Walking took 20, and by the time she reached the covered bench, her feet hurt, and her designer shoes had a scuff she'd probably paid $200 for. 4 other people waited at the stop. They glanced at her, then away, then back again like they couldn't quite process what they were seeing. Sophia pulled out her phone and pretended to text someone. The bus arrived 12 minutes late, loud and smelling faintly of diesel and old upholstery. Sophia climbed on, scanned the card Vanessa had left on the kitchen counter, and immediately understood she'd made a tactical error. Every seat was taken except one in the very back, next to a middle-aged man who looked like he'd been awake for 3 days straight. She sat down. He didn't acknowledge her, neither did anyone else. But she felt their awareness anyway. The girl in $1,000 shoes sitting in the back of a city bus, like she'd taken a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in someone else's life. Ridgeview Academy appeared through the window after 40 minutes of stops, engine noise, and a driver who took turns like he was personally angry at the road. Sophia got off and immediately wanted to get back on. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. Kids her age climbed out of BMWs, Audis, Teslas that drove themselves. She watched Madison pull up in her white Range Rover, laughing at something her boyfriend said. No one was looking at Sophia yet, but they would. They always did. She walked across the lot with her head down, aiming for the front entrance like it was a finish line. Almost made it too, until someone shouted, "Hail! You take the bus now?" Laughter erupted behind her. She didn't turn around, didn't stop, just kept walking until she reached the doors, pushed through, and let the noise of the hallway swallow her whole. First period was history. She sat in the back and tried to disappear. Second period was math, where Mr. Torres handed back quizzes and Sophia got a 43 circled in red at the top of hers. Third period was English with Mr. Kingston, who glanced at her once and said nothing. By lunch, the whispers had upgraded to open conversation. "Did you see her this morning?" Someone said Vanessa cut her off completely. Guess money doesn't buy grades after all. Sophia bought food she didn't eat and found an empty table in the corner. Madison walked past, saw her, hesitated, then kept going. That hurt more than the whispers. She lasted until sixth period before the humiliation became unbearable. The moment the bell rang, she grabbed her bag and bolted for the east wing, a part of the building nobody used because it was halfway through renovations that had stalled 2 years ago. The hallway was silent, dusty, smelled like old paint and abandonment. Sophia found an unlocked classroom, shut the door, and finally let herself breathe. She didn't cry. She wouldn't give anyone that satisfaction. But she sat against the wall and stared at the ceiling and wondered how everything had fallen apart so fast. That's when she heard the cart, wheels squeaking against tile, a mop bucket sloshing, footsteps that moved with the tired rhythm of someone who'd walked this route 1,000 times. The door opened. A man appeared, maybe 32, wearing a janitorial uniform that had seen better decades. He looked exhausted, the deep kind that sleep didn't fix, but his eyes were steady. Dark hair that needed a cut, stubble that needed a shave, the posture of someone who'd learned to carry weight without complaining about it. He saw Sophia sitting on the floor and stopped. "You okay?" he asked. His voice was quiet, not unkind. Sophia stood up quickly, brushing dust off her jeans. "I'm fine, just needed space." He nodded like that made sense. "This wing's off limits to students." "I know. I'll leave." She headed for the door, but his next words stopped her. "They're brutal here, aren't they?" Sophia turned. "What?" "The students." He set his mop against the wall. "I've worked here 2 years, seen a lot of kids get torn apart in the hallways. You're getting it now, aren't you?" She wanted to lie, wanted to put up the walls she'd spent years building, but something about the way he said it, not pitying, not judging, just observing, made honesty easier. "Yeah," she said. "I am. Because you're failing. Because I got caught failing." Sophia crossed her arms. "Everyone here's probably failing something. I just had the bad luck of having it go public." The janitor considered that. "Your sister did this?" "How do you know about my sister?" "Vanessa Hale's name is on half the buildings in this city. Plus, you're wearing shoes that cost more than my monthly rent. Doesn't take detective work." Sophia looked down at her feet. "She thinks I'm spoiled." "Are you?" "Yeah." The admission surprised her. "I guess I am." The janitor picked up his mop again, but didn't leave. "You want to stop being spoiled, or do you just want people to stop noticing?" "What's the difference? One requires actual work, the other just requires better PR." Sophia laughed, bitter, sharp. "Work hasn't exactly been my specialty. That's fixable." "You don't know me." "I know you're sitting in an abandoned classroom because you'd rather hide than face them." He looked at her with those tired, steady eyes. "I also know hiding doesn't change anything. You'll still have to walk those hallways tomorrow. So what do I do?" He leaned against his doorframe, quiet for a moment. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. "If you want to win, start at 0. Sophia frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means stop pretending you're something you're not. Stop relying on your name, your sister's money, all the things that used to protect you. Strip it all away and build yourself back up using nothing but your own hands." "That sounds terrible." "It is." He almost smiled. "But it's the only way that sticks." Sophia stared at him. "Why do you care?" "I don't." He pushed off the doorframe. "But if you decide you want help, come find me before school starts. East Wing Library, 6:15. "Why so early?" "Because if you're serious, you won't mind waking up for it." He left before she could respond, his cart squeaking down the hallway until the sound faded completely. Sophia stood alone in the empty classroom, her phone buzzing with texts she didn't want to read. Start at 0. She didn't even know his name. Machan. That night, Sophia sat at the dinner table across from Vanessa and said nothing. They ate in silence, not the comfortable kind, but the brittle kind that came from two people who lived in the same house but occupied completely different worlds. Vanessa's phone buzzed every few minutes. She answered emails between bites. Her attention split so efficiently it barely looked split at all. Sophia pushed food around her plate. "How was school?" Vanessa asked without looking up. "Fantastic. Thanks for asking." Sarcasm isn't an answer. Neither is cutting me off without warning. Vanessa set her fork down. "You're not cut off. You have everything you actually need. Food, housing, education. What you don't have is the luxury of pretending consequences don't apply to you. I get it. You've made your point. Have I?" Vanessa's gaze sharpened. "Because from where I'm sitting, you still think this is temporary. You think if you wait long enough, I'll fold and give you back your easy life. Will you?" "No." The word landed heavy. Sophia looked at her sister, really looked, and saw something she hadn't noticed before. Exhaustion. Not the kind you slept off, but the kind that lived in your bones. Vanessa ran a multi-billion-dollar company, managed investments across 4 continents, and somehow still found time to micromanage Sophia's life. And Sophia had never once asked her if she was okay. "Why do you care so much?" Sophia asked quietly. Vanessa blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "About me, my grades, all of it." Sophia leaned forward. "You built your empire. You're successful, powerful. Everyone respects you. Why does it matter if I'm failing high school?" For a moment, Vanessa looked like she might actually answer. Then the walls came back up. "Because you're my responsibility," she said. "And I don't accept failure from myself or anyone carrying my name." She stood, picked up her plate, and left the table. Sophia sat alone in the dining room, surrounded by wealth that suddenly felt very cold. Months. The alarm went off at 5 the next morning. Sophia stared at the ceiling, debating. She could go back to sleep. Pretend yesterday's conversation never happened. Ignore the janitor's offer and let herself drift through the rest of the semester on autopilot, or she could start at 0. She got dressed in the dark and left the house before Vanessa woke up. The city looked different at this hour, quieter, less performed. She took the bus, same route, same diesel smell. But this time it felt less like punishment and more like routine, something she'd have to get used to. Ridgeview's parking lot was empty when she arrived. The building looked smaller without crowds, almost vulnerable in the early light. The East Wing was still off limits, still dusty. Sophia found the library, a room that had probably been impressive once, but now just looked forgotten. Half the shelves were empty. The tables were scarred with years of carved initials, windows that didn't open right. The janitor was already there, sitting at one of the tables with a thermos of coffee and a notebook. He looked up when she entered. "You came. You told me to. I gave you an option. You chose to show up." He gestured to the chair across from him. "That's different." Sophia sat down, suddenly nervous. "What now?" "Now you tell me what you're actually bad at." "Everything, apparently." "Specifics." She hesitated. "Writing, essays, analysis, anything that requires making an actual argument." I freeze. The blank page just stares at me. "What about reading?" "I can read fine. I just don't." "Why not?" "Because it's boring." "No." He leaned back. "You think it's boring because you've never had to fight for the information. Everything's been handed to you, pre-digested, turned into easy consumption. You've never had to work for understanding, so you don't value it." Sophia bristled. "You don't know me." "You're right. I don't." He pushed the notebook across the table. "So start writing. Tell me who you actually are, not the version you perform for your friends or your sister, the real one." "How much?" "1 page. Handwritten. No lies, no performance, no hiding behind what you think sounds good." "That's it?" "That's it." He stood, picking up his thermos. "I've got a building to clean. You've got 30 minutes. If you're still here when I get back, we'll talk. If you're not, we won't do this again." He left. Sophia stared at the empty notebook. "Tell me who you actually are." She picked up the pen and started writing. She was still there when he returned. The janitor sat down, took the notebook, and read in silence. His expression didn't change, which somehow made it worse. Sophia found herself holding her breath. Finally, he looked up. "This is good. It's terrible. It's honest. That's the same thing." He flipped back through the pages. "You wrote about feeling invisible in your own life, about how everyone sees the money, the name, the privilege, but nobody actually sees you, Wishet. That sounds like something every rich kid says to feel special." "Maybe." He set the notebook down. "But you also wrote about resenting your sister while simultaneously wanting her approval. That's real. That's complicated. That's something we can work with." Sophia crossed her arms. "So what? You're going to turn me into a good student through daily journaling?" "No. I'm going to teach you how to think clearly and express yourself without hiding." He leaned forward. "Writing isn't about sounding smart. It's about knowing what you actually believe and having the guts to say it out loud. And you think I can do that? I think you already did. You just need to do it consistently." Something shifted in Sophia's chest. Not hope exactly, but something adjacent to it. "What do I call you?" she asked. "Ethan," he said. "My name's Ethan Cole." "Okay, Ethan Cole." Sophia took a breath. "Teach me?" He almost smiled. "Same time tomorrow. Bring the notebook." She left the library as the hallways started filling with students, her phone already buzzing with texts she'd ignore until later. For the first time in weeks, Sophia didn't feel like she was drowning. She felt like she'd found the surface. And somewhere below it, buried beneath years of privilege and performance, something real was starting to wake up. The notebook became Sophia's constant companion. She carried it everywhere, tucked inside her backpack during classes, balanced on her lap during bus rides, open on her desk late at night when the house fell silent around her. The pages filled slowly at first, then faster as her thoughts found their rhythm. Ethan had given her a simple instruction: write what you see, not what you think you should see. So she did. She wrote about the way Madison's smile never quite reached her eyes anymore, about the janitor who worked second shift and always looked half asleep, about Vanessa eating dinner alone in her office while the rest of the house stayed dark. By the third morning session, Sophia had covered 20 pages. Ethan read through them while drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He flipped pages without comment, occasionally pausing on a paragraph before moving forward. Sophia watched him from across the table, her stomach tight with something between anticipation and dread. Finally, he closed the notebook. "You're getting better at observation," he said. "But you're still hiding." What do you mean? I wrote exactly what I saw." "You wrote what felt safe." Ethan tapped the notebook. "You described your sister eating alone. You didn't write about how that made you feel. You mentioned Madison's smile. You didn't mention why you still care about someone who abandoned you the second things got hard." Sophia looked away. "That's not the assignment." "There is no assignment. There's just you learning to tell the truth." "I am telling the truth." "Hey, you're reporting facts. That's different." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Facts are easy. Anyone can list what they observe. But writing that matters. Writing that connects requires you to examine the space between what you see and what you feel about what you see." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Ethan almost smiled. "But it's also how you stop being a passive observer in your own life." Sophia pulled the notebook back toward her. "So what do you want me to write?" Same thing, but this time don't run from the uncomfortable parts. Sit with them. Examine why they make you uncomfortable." He stood, grabbing his thermos. "And tomorrow, read it out loud." Out loud. You can't hide behind the page when you're speaking. Forces honesty. He headed toward the door, then paused. "Also, there's someone I want you to meet." "Who?" "You'll see." He left before she could press further. Sophia sat alone in the library, staring at her handwriting. The words looked smaller somehow, less significant than they'd felt when she wrote them. She thought about what Ethan said, the space between seeing and feeling, and started a new entry. "Madison stopped sitting with me because she's afraid being seen with a failure will damage her reputation." That shouldn't hurt. We were never actually friends, just two people who understood how to perform friendship in a way that benefited us both. But it does hurt, because even a performed friendship is better than eating alone while people whisper about you 3 tables away. Her hand cramped. She kept writing. Vanessa eats in her office because she's incapable of being vulnerable, even in her own home. She built walls so high she can't find the door anymore. I used to admire that. Now I just feel sorry for her. And maybe that's worse. Pity is just another form of distance. The bell rang for first period. Sophia closed the notebook and shoved it in her bag, her chest feeling tight and open at the same time. The next morning, someone else was waiting in the library. A girl around Sophia's age sat hunched over a desk near the windows, her posture radiating the kind of anxiety that made you want to apologize just for existing in the same room. Dark hair pulled into a messy bun, oversized sweater that looked like it had been through multiple wash cycles, eyes that darted toward Sophia, then away just as quickly. Ethan stood near the door with his cart. Sophia, this is Priya. Priya Sophia. Priya gave a small wave that didn't quite commit. Sophia glanced between them. Is this the person you wanted me to meet? Priya's failing English too, Ethan said. Different reasons, same outcome. I thought working together might help. I don't need a study partner, Sophia said quickly. Neither do I, Priya added, just as fast. Ethan looked at them both with that calm, tired expression that somehow conveyed complete understanding and zero sympathy simultaneously. Then think of it as mutual accountability. You're both here because you decided to start over. That's easier with witnesses. He left before either of them could argue. Sophia and Priya stared at each other across the empty library. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and brittle. So, Priya said finally, you're the billionaire's sister. And you're the girl who had a panic attack during the oral presentation last month. Priya flinched. Everyone knows about that? Everyone knows about everything here. Sophia sat down at the table, pulling out her notebook. That's kind of the problem. Why are you really here? Priya asked. You could hire a private tutor. You could transfer schools. You don't have to wake up at 5 in the morning to sit in a dusty library with a janitor and some random anxious girl. My sister cut me off. So get her to uncut you. It's not that simple, isn't it? Priya leaned back in her chair. You're rich. Rich people don't have real problems. They have inconveniences they can pay to solve. Sophia felt anger spike hot and fast. You don't know anything about my life, and you don't know anything about mine. Priya's voice stayed quiet, but something sharp moved underneath. I'm here because my parents can't afford a tutor, because I have 2 younger brothers who need help with homework every night, because I work weekends at my uncle's restaurant and still can't afford the college prep courses everyone else takes for granted. So yeah, watching you complain about your billionaire sister being mean to you isn't exactly moving me to tears. Sophia opened her mouth to snap back, then stopped. Because Priya was right. She'd been so focused on her own humiliation that she hadn't considered everyone else at Ridgeview carried their own weight. Some just carried it less visibly. I'm sorry, Sophia said. Priya blinked. What? You're right. I don't know your life, and I've been acting like my problems are the only ones that matter. Sophia opened her notebook. Ethan told me to read this out loud today. You want to hear it? Or would that make this whole thing worse? Priya considered, then shrugged. Might as well. We're already stuck here together. So Sophia read. She stumbled over words, hated the sound of her own voice, wanted to stop after every sentence. But Priya listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from skeptical to something closer to understanding. When Sophia finished, Priya was quiet for a moment. That was good, she said finally. It was embarrassing. Same thing. Priya pulled out her own notebook. Want to hear mine? They traded entries back and forth until Ethan returned, reading each other's work with the kind of brutal honesty that only worked because neither of them had anything left to lose. Priya wrote about feeling invisible despite being surrounded by people. Sophia wrote about feeling watched constantly but never actually seen. Their struggles were different, but the isolation underneath was identical. By the time the first bell rang, something unspoken had shifted between them. Not quite friendship yet, but the foundation of it. Same time tomorrow? Priya asked as they packed their bags. Sophia nodded. same time. The days blurred together after that. Wake up before dawn, take the bus that always ran late, meet Ethan and Priya in the library before the school came alive. They wrote, read, argued about word choice and honesty, and whether vulnerability was actually strength or just another word for weakness. Ethan pushed them both relentlessly, never accepting their first drafts, never letting them hide behind pretty language that meant nothing. Cut that sentence, he'd say, marking through a paragraph Sophia had spent 30 minutes perfecting. Why? It sounds good. It sounds like you're trying to impress me. I don't need impressive. I need true. Sophia would rewrite it, then rewrite it again. Then throw her pen down in frustration while Ethan waited with the patience of someone who'd seen this exact breakdown 100 times before. You're doing this on purpose, she accused once. Doing what? Making it harder than it needs to be. No, I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be. He handed her pen back. Easy doesn't teach you anything. Struggle does. 2 weeks in, another student appeared. Luis was a junior who'd been held back a year and carried that failure like a physical weight. He sat in the back during their sessions, barely speaking, just listening while Sophia and Priya read their work aloud. Ethan let him be invisible for 3 days before calling him out. You planning to participate or just audit? Luis shifted uncomfortably. I'm not a good writer. Neither are they. That's why we're here. I don't have anything worth writing about. Everyone has something worth writing about. Most people just don't think their story matters enough to tell. Ethan grabbed a spare notebook from his cart and tossed it to Luis. Prove yourself wrong. Start with why you're here instead of sleeping. Luis caught the notebook but didn't open it. The next morning he had half a page written. The morning after that, 2 pages. By the end of the week, he was reading aloud with the same nervous energy that Sophia recognized from her own first attempts. The library stopped feeling abandoned. It became something else, a space carved out of the school's relentless performance culture, where failure wasn't punished, just examined, where struggling out loud was encouraged instead of hidden, where the only requirement was showing up and trying. Word spread quietly. A freshman named Maya started appearing, followed by a senior named James who'd failed AP Literature twice. Then 2 more juniors, a sophomore, another freshman who barely spoke English but wrote in broken sentences that somehow communicated more than perfect grammar ever could. Ethan never turned anyone away. He just kept showing up at 6 in the morning with his thermos and his red pen and his absolute refusal to accept anything less than honesty. How do you know all this? Sophia asked him once, when it was just the 2 of them in the library after everyone else had left for first period. Know what? Teaching, writing, how to push people without breaking them. Ethan was quiet for a moment, cleaning his reading glasses with the edge of his shirt. I used to teach, a long time ago. What happened? Life got complicated. He put his glasses back on. Sometimes you have to rebuild from scratch. That's what I'm doing. That's what you're all doing. Is that why you work here, as a janitor? It's a job. It pays bills. Lets me keep a roof over my daughter's head. He stood, gathering empty coffee cups left behind by students. Not everything has to be a career. Sometimes survival is enough. Sophia watched him move around the library, straightening chairs, erasing the whiteboard where they'd mapped out essay structures. He moved with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to be invisible, to do his work without drawing attention or expectation. What's your daughter's name, Ishat? She asked. Lily. His expression softened. She's 6. Smart as hell, stubborn as concrete, obsessed with dinosaurs for reasons I don't fully understand. Does she know you do this? The morning sessions? Yes. She knows I help students sometimes. Doesn't know the details. Ethan paused. She thinks I'm a teacher. I don't correct her. Why not? Because to her I am. He looked at Sophia with those tired, steady eyes. Jobs are just labels. What you actually do for people matters more. The bell for first period rang, shattering the quiet. Sophia grabbed her bag and headed for the door, but turned back before leaving. Thank you. For this. All of it. Ethan nodded. Don't thank me. Just keep showing up. She did. The sessions became routine. The group grew to 12 regular students, all of them carrying their own reasons for being there. They filled the library with noise and argument and occasional laughter when someone's writing landed exactly right. Ethan facilitated but never dominated, letting them teach each other through feedback and shared struggle. Sophia's grades started climbing, not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. She turned in essays that her teachers actually read instead of skimming. She participated in class discussions without freezing. She discovered that writing wasn't about sounding smart. It was about figuring out what you actually thought and having the courage to defend it. But the real change happened internally. She stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes for validation from people who'd never actually cared about her. Stopped wearing clothes designed to signal wealth and status. Started listening more than she performed. The armor she'd built over years of privilege began cracking, revealing something raw and uncertain underneath. It was uncomfortable. It was necessary. At home, things with Vanessa remained frozen. They moved through the house like ghosts haunting separate dimensions, occasionally colliding during meals that neither of them enjoyed. Vanessa worked constantly, her phone permanently attached to her hand, her attention fractured across a dozen simultaneous crises that apparently required her immediate intervention. Sophia stopped trying to bridge the gap. She focused on her own work, her own growth, her own reconstruction. Then one morning, everything shifted. Sophia arrived at the library to find Ethan standing near the windows with a small girl in dinosaur pajamas. The girl was holding a worn stuffed triceratops and yawning hard enough to make her whole face scrunch up. "Lily," Ethan was saying quietly, "you need to sit here while I work, okay? Just for an hour." "But I'm tired," Lily mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "I know. You can sleep in the corner. I'll wake you up when we're done." Lily noticed Sophia standing in the doorway. "Is that your student?" "One of them," Ethan said. "She's pretty." Sophia felt her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't immediately name. "Thanks. I like your dinosaur." "His name is Reginald." Lily hugged the Triceratops closer. "He's 300 million years old." 65 million, Ethan corrected gently. Triceratops were late Cretaceous. "That's what I said." Ethan met Sophia's eyes over his daughter's head, and she saw exhaustion there. The kind that came from single parenting while working a job that barely paid. Enough to cover rent and daycare and everything else required to keep a 6-year-old fed and clothed and safe. "Childcare fell through," he said simply. "I didn't have anywhere else to bring her." "It's fine," Sophia said. "We can work around it." But as the other students filtered in, Lily's presence shifted the entire dynamic. She sat in the corner with Reginald, coloring in a workbook that was clearly intended for kids older than her. Occasionally, she'd look up and ask questions that derailed entire conversations. "Why are you all here so early?" she asked during a particularly heated debate about comma placement. "Because we want to get better at writing," Priya answered. "Why?" "So we can pass our classes." "Why?" "So we can graduate and go to college." "Why?" Priya looked helplessly at Ethan, who just smiled. "That's the question, isn't it?" The sessions continued like that for 3 days. Ethan's daughter became an unexpected fixture, asking impossible questions and falling asleep on a pile of coats while they worked. No one complained. If anything, Lily's presence made the library feel more human, less like an academic pressure cooker, and more like a space where life happened messily and imperfectly. On the 4th morning, Lily looked up from her coloring and said, "My daddy used to be a real teacher." Everyone stopped. Ethan froze, his pen hovering over Luis's essay. "Lily," he said quietly, "that's not—" "You did," she insisted, "at the big school with the stone walls. You had an office and students came to see you and everything." Sophia watched Ethan's face close down, walls slamming into place. "That was a long time ago," he said. "What happened?" Maya asked. "Nothing that matters now." Ethan stood abruptly. "Let's take 5. I need to refill my coffee." He left the library, taking Lily with him. The students exchanged glances. "Anyone know what that was about?" James asked. No one did, but Sophia felt something shift in her understanding of Ethan Cole. He wasn't just a janitor who happened to be good at teaching. He was someone who'd lost something significant and rebuilt himself in whatever form survival allowed. Someone who understood starting at zero because he'd been forced to do it himself. When Ethan returned 15 minutes later, his walls were back in place and the subject was clearly closed. They worked through the rest of the session in careful normalcy, everyone pretending the crack in his armor hadn't appeared. But Sophia couldn't stop thinking about it. That afternoon during lunch, she did something she hadn't done in weeks. She approached Madison. Madison was sitting with her usual group, laughing at something on someone's phone. She looked up when Sophia appeared, and her expression flickered through several emotions before landing on polite neutrality. "Hey," Madison said. "Can we talk? Just for a minute." Madison glanced at her friends, then stood. They walked to an empty corner of the cafeteria where the noise provided cover. "What's up?" Madison asked, her tone carefully casual. "Do you know anything about Ethan Cole, the janitor?" Madison's eyebrows rose. "Why?" "Just curious. Someone mentioned he used to teach at a university." "Oh, that." Madison lowered her voice. "Yeah, everyone knows that story. He taught English Lit at Whitmore College. Had tenure, published papers, the whole academic track. Then his wife died in a car accident and he kind of fell apart. Lost his job, lost custody of his daughter temporarily, lost everything. Took him 2 years to get stable enough to get her back." Sophia's stomach dropped. "When was this?" "Like 3 years ago? Maybe 4? Madison shifted uncomfortably. "Why are you asking?" "No reason. Just heard his daughter mention it." "Look, Sophia." Madison stopped, then started again. "I know things have been weird between us. And I know I wasn't there when everything happened with your sister. That wasn't cool." "It's fine." "It's not." Madison looked genuinely uncomfortable now. "But also, hanging out with the janitor? That's not going to help your reputation here. I don't care about my reputation anymore." "Well, you will once you realize how hard it is to rebuild one." Madison glanced back at her table. "I have to go. But seriously, be careful. People are already talking." She walked away before Sophia could respond. Sophia stood alone near the vending machines, processing what she'd learned. Ethan hadn't just rebuilt from scratch. He'd rebuilt from complete destruction, and somehow he'd managed to hold on to enough of himself to help others do the same thing. That night, she wrote 7 pages about loss and rebuilding and the different ways people survived catastrophe. She didn't write about Ethan directly, but he was present in every sentence. The next morning, she arrived early enough to catch him alone. "Madison told me," she said without preamble, "about your wife, about what happened." Ethan's hand stilled on the coffee he was pouring. "Did she? I'm sorry, that's not enough, but I am." "It was a long time ago." "That doesn't make it not matter." Ethan turned to face her fully. "What are you looking for here, Sophia? Confirmation that trauma makes people deeper? That suffering builds character?" "No, She struggled for words. "I wanted you to know that what you're doing here matters. These sessions, helping us, all of it. You didn't have to do any of this." "I know I didn't. So why do you?" "Deke." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Because teaching is the only thing I know how to do that feels like it means something. I lost the credentials, the title, the professional respect. But I didn't lose the ability to see when someone's struggling and needs help." He picked up his thermos. "You all remind me why I started teaching in the first place, before it became about publications and tenure and politics, when it was just about helping people find their voice. We're lucky you're here. I'm lucky you all show up." He checked his watch. "Speaking of which, we should start. Priya's presenting her essay today, and she's nervous as hell about it." They worked through the session like normal, but something had shifted. The library felt less like a temporary refuge and more like something they were building together. A space that existed outside the school's brutal hierarchy, where struggle was shared instead of hidden. Priya read her essay aloud with shaking hands. It was about her uncle's restaurant, the invisible labor of immigrant families, the weight of expectation she couldn't articulate to parents who'd sacrificed everything for her education. Her voice cracked twice. She finished and looked up, terrified. The room erupted in support. Not polite applause, but genuine enthusiasm. People calling out the specific lines that hit hardest. The moments where her honesty cut through. Priya's eyes filled with tears. "You guys actually liked it." "It was incredible," Louise said. "The part about translation guilt," Maya added. "That destroyed me." Sophia watched Priya's face transform from fear to something like hope and felt her own chest tighten. This was what Ethan had built here. Not just writing practice, but a space where being vulnerable didn't make you weak, where failing publicly was how you learned to succeed privately, where starting at zero was the only way to figure out who you actually were underneath all the performance. The bell rang. Everyone packed up reluctantly, still discussing Priya's essay as they headed toward first period. Sophia lingered behind, helping Ethan straighten chairs. "How do you know when you're actually getting better?" she asked. "Not just writing better, but being better." Ethan considered the question. "When you stop measuring yourself against who you used to be and start building toward who you want to become." He pushed the last chair in, but it's not a straight line. Some days you'll feel like you've made progress. Other days, you'll feel like you're back at square one. Both are part of the process. That sounds exhausting. It is. He picked up his cart. But it's also the only thing worth doing. Sophia left the library and walked into the hallway that was rapidly filling with students. For the first time since Vanessa cut her off, she didn't feel the weight of their judgment. She'd found something stronger than their approval. She'd found a space where growth mattered more than image, where struggle was evidence of effort rather than failure. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to collapse. Because across campus, in the administrative offices, someone had taken a photo of Ethan's daughter sleeping in the library during morning sessions. And by lunch, that photo would be everywhere, accompanied by questions about appropriate boundaries, professional misconduct, and whether a janitor had any business running unauthorized academic sessions before school hours. The carefully built refuge was about to become very public, and Sophia would have to decide whether the thing Ethan had built was worth defending when defending it meant stepping fully into the light. The photo appeared on Ridgeview's unofficial social media account during third period. Someone had captured it through the library window. Lily curled up on a pile of jackets, Reginald the Triceratops tucked under her chin, sleeping while students worked at tables in the background. The caption read, "Janitor brings kid to secret student meetings before school. Anyone else think this is weird?" By lunch, it had 200 shares. Sophia didn't see it until Priya grabbed her arm in the hallway between classes, phone screen thrust into her face. "Have you seen this?" Sophia's stomach dropped as she read through the comments. Most were speculation about what the morning sessions actually were, theories ranging from innocent study groups to something far more sinister. A few defended Ethan. Most questioned why a janitor was meeting privately with students at all. "We need to tell him," Priya said, already moving toward the east wing. They found Ethan in the second-floor hallway, mopping near the science labs. He looked up when they approached, immediately reading their expressions. "What happened?" Sophia showed him the photo, watched his face drain of color as he scrolled through comments. "Where did they get this?" His voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved underneath. "Someone must have taken it through the window," Priya said. "Ethan, people are asking questions about the sessions, about Lily, about why you're meeting with us. We're not doing anything wrong." "I know that, but it looks—" Sophia struggled for the right word. "It looks inappropriate. To people who don't understand what we're actually doing." Ethan handed the phone back, his jaw tight. "Get to class, both of you." "What are you going to do?" "My job." He picked up his mop. "Let me handle this." But by the end of the day, handling it was no longer his decision to make. Principal Hendricks called Ethan to her office during seventh period. The summons came through the janitorial supervisor, delivered with the kind of apologetic tone that meant everyone already knew what was coming. Sophia heard about it from Luis, who heard it from his girlfriend who worked in the front office, who'd seen Ethan walk past looking like he was headed to his own execution. The final bell rang. Students poured into hallways, flooding toward parking lots and bus stops in freedom. Sophia lingered near her locker, waiting. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Ethan finally emerged from the administrative wing walking like someone had reached inside him and removed something vital. His face was blank, carefully composed, but his hand shook slightly as he gripped the strap of his work bag. Sophia intercepted him before he reached the exit. "What did they say?" "I'm suspended pending investigation." His voice came out flat, effective immediately. "They want to review whether the morning sessions constitute an inappropriate relationship with students." "That's insane. We asked you to help us." "Doesn't matter. I'm staff, you're students. I didn't get authorization from the administration." He looked past her toward the doors. "I need to pick up Lily from aftercare. I'm already late." "Ethan, we'll fix this. We'll tell them the truth." Geets. The truth doesn't matter when optics are bad. He met her eyes finally, and she saw something broken there. I've been here before, Sophia. Different circumstances, same outcome. The institution protects itself. People like me become collateral damage. So what? You're just giving up? I'm accepting reality. He adjusted his bag. The sessions are done. You'll all be fine without me. No, we won't. But he was already walking away, pushing through the double doors into afternoon sunlight that looked too bright for the moment. Sophia stood in the empty hallway, her phone buzzing with messages from the group. Everyone had heard. Everyone was panicking. The library that had felt like sanctuary that morning now felt like a crime scene. That night, Sophia sat across from Vanessa at dinner and broke the silence they'd maintained for weeks. I need your help. Vanessa looked up from her tablet, surprised. With what? Someone at school is being punished for helping students. He didn't do anything wrong, but the administration suspended him because it looks bad. What kind of help was he providing? Writing tutoring, before school, completely voluntary. Sophia set her fork down. He's the reason my grades improved. He's the reason a dozen struggling students actually have a chance now. And why is the school punishing him for that? Because he's a janitor, not a teacher. Because he brought his daughter to one session when childcare fell through. Because someone took a photo and made it look suspicious when it wasn't. Vanessa was quiet, processing. What's his name? Ethan Cole. Something flickered across Vanessa's face, recognition, maybe, or surprise. The Ethan Cole who used to teach at Whitmore College. You know him? I know of him. He published a paper on narrative structure in contemporary literature that changed how I thought about business communication. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. I didn't know he was working at Ridgeview. What happened to his academic career? His wife died. He fell apart, lost everything. Sophia met her sister's eyes. He rebuilt himself from zero. Now the school's trying to destroy him again for having the audacity to help students they've already given up on. And you want me to intervene. I want you to use your influence for something that actually matters. Sophia's voice shook slightly. You spend all this energy managing your image, controlling narratives, making sure the Hale name stays untouchable. For once, use that power to protect someone who can't protect themselves. Vanessa studied her sister with an expression Sophia couldn't read. You've changed. Yeah, because of him. Tell me exactly what happened. Everything. So Sophia did. She explained the morning sessions, the writing exercises, the way Ethan pushed them toward honesty instead of performance. She described the library filling with students who'd been written off by the system, kids who found their voices in that dusty room before dawn. She told Vanessa about Lily sleeping in the corner, about Ethan's patient refusal to accept anything less than their best effort, about the transformation she'd witnessed in herself and everyone around her. When she finished, Vanessa was silent for a long moment. The school board meets tomorrow night, she said finally. I'll make some calls. That's it? You'll just fix it? I don't know if I can fix it, but I can make sure they understand the cost of their decision. Vanessa stood, gathering her tablet and phone. This Ethan Cole, he sounds like someone worth defending. He is. Vanessa paused at the doorway. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found something that matters to you, even if it took me cutting you off to make it happen. She left before Sophia could respond. The next morning felt wrong. Sophia took the bus alone, arrived at school as the sun rose, and walked past the East Wing Library without entering. The door was locked. The lights were off. Inside, chairs sat empty at tables where 12 students had gathered every morning for weeks. The absence felt like grief. She found Priya near the lockers, surrounded by Luis, Maya, James, and half a dozen others from their group. Any word? Maya asked immediately. Sophia shook her head. My sister said she'd make calls. I don't know if it'll help. We should do something, Luis said. Make a petition, talk to the administration. Something. And say what? James crossed his arms. That we want the janitor back? They'll just say we can get help from actual teachers. Actual teachers didn't help us, Priya said quietly. They gave up on us. Ethan didn't. Then we make them understand that. Sophia pulled out her phone. Everyone who attended the morning sessions, meet in the cafeteria during lunch. We're going to figure this out. But word spread fast. By noon, 23 students crammed into a corner of the cafeteria, speaking in urgent whispers while the rest of the school carried on oblivious. Some Sophia recognized from the library. Others were friends of friends, kids who'd heard about the sessions and wished they'd had the courage to show up. We need to go public, Priya said. Write testimonials about what the sessions meant to us. Submit them to the school board. They won't care about testimonials, Louise countered. They care about liability and optics. We need to show them that punishing Ethan makes them look worse than keeping him. How do we do that? Maya asked. Sophia thought about it, turning the problem over in her mind like one of Ethan's writing exercises. What was the story the school was telling itself? That they were protecting students from inappropriate staff contact. What story did they need to hear instead? The speech competition, she said suddenly. It's in 3 days. Half the school attends. Board members always come because it makes them look invested in academics. So what? You're going to give the speech defending Ethan? James looked skeptical. That's your plan? Not defending him, showing them what he actually built. Sophia's mind raced, connecting pieces. The competition theme is transformation through challenge. I'll talk about how starting at 0 changed everything. I won't mention Ethan by name, but everyone will know exactly who I'm talking about. That's risky, Priya said. If you lose, it just looks like you're a bitter student making excuses. Then I won't lose. Sophia saw. I have to try. She looked around at the gathered students, all of them watching her with varying degrees of hope and doubt. He gave us our voices back. The least I can do is use mine. The next 2 days blurred together in a haze of writing and revision. Sophia drafted the speech longhand in her notebook, crossing out entire paragraphs, rewriting opening lines a dozen times. She thought about everything Ethan had taught her. Be honest, be specific, earn your conclusions instead of assuming them. She wrote about humiliation and privilege and the difference between failure that destroys and failure that rebuilds. Priya and Maya helped her rehearse during lunch, offering brutal feedback that made the speech stronger, even as it made Sophia want to throw her notes in the trash. Louise timed her delivery. James questioned every sentence that felt too polished, pushing her toward rawness instead of performance. You're still hiding, he said after her 4th run-through. The beginning is good, but you lose it in the middle. You start trying to sound inspirational instead of just telling the truth. The middle is the hardest part, because that's where you have to actually be vulnerable. The rest is setup and conclusion. The middle is where you expose yourself. Sophia rewrote the middle section that night, sitting at her desk while the house stayed dark around her. She wrote about the moment she realized money couldn't save her, about riding the bus and feeling her armor crack, about walking into a dusty library and meeting a man who saw through her performance to the terrified person underneath. She wrote until her hand cramped, then kept writing. The morning of the competition, Sophia woke before her alarm. She dressed carefully, nice enough to be taken seriously, simple enough not to look like she was trying too hard. Checked her notes for the 100th time. Ate breakfast she didn't taste. Vanessa appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in pajamas, which was so unusual that Sophia actually stared. You're up early, Sophia said. Couldn't sleep. Vanessa poured coffee. I made those calls. Talked to 4 board members, the superintendent and the school's attorney. And they're reviewing the suspension. No promises, but they agreed to hear testimony at tonight's meeting. Vanessa sat down across from her. Your speech today. It matters. If you can show them the value of what Cole built, it gives them political cover to reverse their decision. No pressure then. You can handle pressure, you're a Hale. Vanessa almost smiled. Also, I'm coming to watch. Sophia blinked. You're what? The competition. I cleared my afternoon. She held up a hand before Sophia could respond. Don't make it weird. I'm curious to see what changed you from the girl who couldn't finish an essay to someone willing to publicly defend a suspended janitor. Ethan changed me. No. He gave you tools. You did the work. Vanessa stood, taking her coffee with her. I'll see you there. Try not to be nervous. She left Sophia alone in the kitchen, stunned. Ridgeview's auditorium filled quickly that afternoon. Students packed the seats, some genuinely interested in the competition, most just grateful for an excuse to skip last period. Teachers lined the back wall. Administrators sat in reserved front row seats, looking appropriately attentive. Sophia watched from backstage, her stomach churning. 8 other competitors waited with her, all of them reviewing notes, practicing under their breath, vibrating with pre-performance anxiety. She recognized most of them. Honors students, debate team veterans, kids who'd been training for this since freshman year. She was the only person competing who'd been failing English 6 weeks ago. The competition began. First speaker delivered a polished piece about overcoming sports injuries. Second speaker talked about immigration trauma with impressive emotional control. Third speaker discussed academic pressure in a way that felt memorized rather than lived. Then it was Sophia's turn. She walked onto the stage, notes trembling in her hand, and looked out at the sea of faces. Found Priya in the third row, Luis beside her. Maya and James and the rest of their group scattered throughout the audience. Found Vanessa sitting alone near the back, phone tucked away, actually present. Sophia set her notes on the podium and didn't look at them again. 6 weeks ago, I was failing, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. Not dramatically, not publicly, just quietly sliding toward failure while everyone pretended not to notice, because my last name was on enough donation plaques to buy silence. I thought I was entitled to success. I thought my family's money meant I didn't have to earn anything, including my education. She paused, letting the admission settle. Then my sister took everything away. The car service, the credit cards, the safety net I'd relied on my entire life. She forced me to ride the public bus, to eat cafeteria food, to exist in this school without my privilege protecting me. And for the first time, I understood what humiliation actually felt like. Sophia saw some students shifting uncomfortably. Good. Sophia saw discomfort meant they were listening. I thought I'd hit bottom. Thought things couldn't get worse. Then I realized something terrifying. I didn't know how to do anything. I couldn't write a coherent essay, couldn't defend an argument, couldn't think critically without someone else's money smoothing the path. I was 18 years old and completely helpless. Her hands stopped shaking. The words came easier now. Her hands stopped. That's when I met someone who changed everything. Not a counselor, not a therapist, not a highly paid private tutor. A man who worked in this building, who most students walked past without seeing, who everyone underestimated because his job title didn't match his actual capabilities. She could feel the administration tensing in their front row seats. He told me something that sounded cruel at first. He said if I wanted to win, I needed to start at zero, strip away everything I'd been hiding behind, face exactly how much I didn't know, and rebuild from complete honesty. Sophia's voice grew stronger. So that's what I did. I showed up before school every morning in a dusty library nobody used. I wrote badly at first, really badly, but I kept writing. I read my work out loud even though my voice shook. I accepted criticism that hurt. I stopped performing competence and started actually building it. Bupam cham, where is just some poem? She looked directly at Priya, then at the others scattered through the crowd. And I wasn't alone. Other students joined, kids who were struggling, who felt invisible, who'd been written off by a system that only valued them when they were already succeeding. We created something together in that library, not a study group, not a club, something harder to name, a space where failure wasn't shameful, where starting at zero was permission to grow. The auditorium had gone completely silent. We learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, that admitting you don't know something is the first step toward actually understanding it, that asking for help doesn't make you less capable, it makes you brave enough to face your limitations. Sophia's throat tightened. She pushed through. The man who taught us this lost his career years ago, lost everything that mattered to him. But he didn't lose his ability to see struggling students and offer them the same thing someone must have offered him once, a chance to start over, to rebuild, to prove that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. She gripped the podium. This school suspended him. They looked at what he built and saw liability instead of transformation. They saw a janitor crossing boundaries instead of a teacher doing what teachers are supposed to do, meeting students where they are and helping them become something more. Her voice cracked slightly. She didn't hide it. Starting at zero was never humiliation. It was freedom. Freedom from pretending I was something I wasn't. Freedom from my family's name, my privilege, my carefully constructed image. Freedom to fail publicly and learn from it. Freedom to be imperfect and human and still worth the effort. Sophia stepped back from the podium. That's what transformation through challenge actually looks like. Not some polished success story where everything works out perfectly, but the messy, difficult, uncomfortable process of tearing yourself down and rebuilding from nothing. And if this school can't see the value in that, if they'd rather protect their image than protect the people doing the hardest work, then they've already failed the students they claim to serve. She walked off stage to silence. Then Priya stood up and started clapping. Luis joined her. Maya, James, the rest of their group. Within seconds, half the auditorium was on their feet, applause building until it filled every corner of the space. Sophia stood in the wings, shaking, while the sound washed over her. She'd done it. She'd said everything she needed to say without hiding, without performing, without protecting herself from the potential consequences. Whether it would matter was beyond her control now. The remaining competitors delivered their speeches to an audience that seemed distracted, still processing what Sophia had said. The judges deliberated for 20 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, Principal Hendricks took the stage to announce the results. Third place went to the immigration trauma speech. Second place to the sports injury recovery. First place, Sophia Hale, for starting at 0. The applause returned, louder this time. Sophia accepted the plaque feeling like she was moving through water, everything slightly unreal. She looked out at the audience and found Vanessa standing in the back, not clapping, just watching with an expression Sophia couldn't quite read. The auditorium emptied slowly. Students congratulated her in passing, some genuine, others clearly confused about what had just happened. The administrators filed out without comment, their faces carefully neutral. Sophia found her group waiting outside. "That was incredible," Priya said, pulling her into a hug. "You think it'll change anything? Even if it doesn't, you said what needed to be said." Luis grinned. The look on Hendricks' face when you called them out was worth it alone. They celebrated quietly, aware that the actual fight was still ahead. The board meeting wouldn't start for another 3 hours. Until then, all they could do was wait. Vanessa appeared as the group was dispersing. "Walk with me," she said to Sophia. They walked through the parking lot as the sun dropped toward the horizon, painting everything orange and gold. "That speech," Vanessa said finally. "It wasn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Something safer, more calculated." She stopped walking. "You exposed yourself completely up there. That was either very brave or very stupid." Maybe both. Probably both." Vanessa looked at her properly. "I never asked you if you were okay when I cut you off. I just assumed you needed to be taught a lesson. I did need the lesson, but not the cruelty. I could have pushed you without humiliating you, could have challenged you without stripping away every safety net." Vanessa's voice stayed level, but something genuine moved underneath. "I'm good at building companies. I'm not good at being a sister." Sophia felt something crack in her chest. "You kept me fed, kept a roof over my head. That's more than a lot of people get. That's the bare minimum, not something to be congratulated for." Vanessa pulled out her phone, checked something, put it away. "The board meeting starts at 7. I'll be there. I can't promise they'll reinstate Cole, but I can promise they'll listen." "Why are you doing this?" "What?" "Because you asked me to. Because for the first time you asked me for something that wasn't about money or convenience." Vanessa almost smiled. "And because anyone who can turn you from the girl who skipped class into someone willing to defend a janitor in front of the entire school probably deserves a second chance." They stood in the parking lot as students drove past, headed home to families and dinners and normal Tuesday evening routines. "I found something in your office," Sophia said suddenly. "A few weeks ago. Documents about reading assessments, accommodations you never used." Vanessa went very still. "You went through my private files?" "I was looking for your donation records. Found those instead." Sophia kept her voice gentle. "You've been hiding it your whole life. The reading difficulties. That's why you're so harsh about my grades. Why you can't tolerate failure. This isn't the time." When is the time? When are we actually going to talk about real things instead of just managing logistics?" Sophia moved closer. "You built an empire despite struggling with something most people take for granted. That's not weakness. That's proof you know exactly what starting at zero looks like. Vanessa's carefully maintained composure cracked. Don't. Don't what? Acknowledge that you're human? That you've been fighting your own battle this whole time while making sure I never had to fight mine? I don't need your pity. I'm not offering pity. I'm offering understanding. Sophia's throat tightened. We're both terrified of being exposed. You just learned to hide it better. Vanessa looked away, her jaw tight. The board meeting. 7 o'clock. I'll see you there. She walked to her car without another word, leaving Sophia alone in the parking lot. The evening descended cold and clear. Sophia took the bus home, changed clothes, stared at her competition plaque without really seeing it. Her phone buzzed constantly. Texts from the group, messages of support, a few critical comments from people who thought she'd overstepped. She ignored all of it. At 6:30, Vanessa appeared in her doorway. Ready? They drove to the administrative building in silence, Vanessa's hands steady on the wheel, her face composed in that controlled way that meant she was managing something beneath the surface. They parked in a lot half full of board members' cars, expensive vehicles that gleamed under fluorescent lights. Inside, the meeting room was already filling. Administrators sat on one side, board members at a long table facing the audience. Parents and community members scattered throughout. Sophia spotted Ethan sitting alone in the back corner, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Their eyes met. He gave her a small nod that might have been acknowledgement or warning. The meeting began with routine business, budget approvals, curriculum reviews, items that blurred together in procedural boredom. Then the board chair cleared his throat. Next item, the suspension of Ethan Cole pending investigation of unauthorized student contact. We have several people signed up to speak. First is Vanessa Hale. Sophia's head snapped toward her sister. Vanessa hadn't mentioned she'd be speaking. Vanessa stood, walked to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd presented to boardrooms full of hostile investors. She didn't look at notes. My name is Vanessa Hale. I run Hale Industries. I'm also Sophia Hale's sister and legal guardian. She paused. I'm here because this board is about to make a mistake that will damage this school's reputation far more than the situation you're trying to contain. The board members shifted uncomfortably. 6 weeks ago, I cut my sister off financially as a consequence for her academic failures. I forced her to confront what her life looked like without privilege protecting her. It was harsh. It was necessary. It also completely failed to address the actual problem. Vanessa's voice stayed level. Sophia wasn't failing because she was lazy or entitled, though she was both those things. She was failing because she'd never learned how to learn. Money bought her access, but it couldn't buy her understanding. Private tutors couldn't reach her because they were treating symptoms instead of causes. She looked directly at Ethan. Then she found someone who understood that. Someone who'd lost everything and rebuilt himself from nothing. Someone who knew the difference between performing competence and actually building it. Vanessa turned back to the board. Ethan Cole ran voluntary writing sessions before school hours. He didn't recruit students. They found him. And he helped them transform their relationship with learning in a way that apparently none of your certified teachers managed to do. The board chair leaned forward. Ms. Hale, with all due respect, Mr. Cole violated district policy by helping students who needed help? Vanessa interrupted smoothly. By sacrificing his own time to do work that should have been done by your academic support staff? By succeeding where your institution failed? That's not fair, Dunsuo. Neither is suspending someone for competently doing the job you're paying other people to do incompetently. Vanessa's eyes hardened. I watched my sister give a speech today that transformed an entire auditorium. 6 weeks ago, she couldn't write a coherent paragraph. That transformation didn't happen because of your curriculum or your certified teachers or your academic policies. It happened because one man cared enough to show up at 6 in the morning and push her toward honesty. She placed her hands on the podium. I'm not here asking for leniency. I'm here telling you that if you don't reinstate Ethan Cole immediately, I will make sure every educational publication and news outlet knows exactly why you punished excellence while rewarding mediocrity. You will become a case study in institutional failure. And I will personally fund a competing after-school program at every local venue that will accept it, hiring Mr. Cole to run it and making absolutely certain everyone knows your administration drove him out. Silence filled the room. Is that a threat, Ms. Hale? The board chair asked quietly. It's a promise. Vanessa stepped back from the podium. Your choice. She sat down beside Sophia, her expression unchanged, as if she hadn't just declared war on the entire school board. The chair looked distinctly uncomfortable now. Other speakers? Warm. Priya stood, then Luis, then Maya, James, and 6 other students from the morning sessions. One by one, they walked to the podium and described what the library had meant to them. Their testimonials were raw, unrehearsed, brutally honest about how close they'd been to giving up before Ethan showed them another option. By the time the last student finished, several board members were whispering to each other. The superintendent leaned over to talk to Principal Hendricks, whose face had gone carefully neutral. The board chair called a 15-minute recess. Everyone filed into the hallway. Sophia found Ethan standing near the water fountain. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Yes, I did. Sophia, even if they reinstate me, this has become too public. The sessions were proof that your method works. She moved closer. You taught us to stop hiding behind what looked good and start building what actually mattered. Now it's your turn. My turn? To stop accepting what other people decide you deserve and start fighting for what you've earned. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his tired eyes. When did you get so stubborn? I learned from the best. The board called everyone back inside. They took their seats, and the chair cleared his throat. After reviewing testimony and consulting with legal counsel, the board has decided to lift Mr. Cole's suspension effective immediately. Relief crashed through Sophia so hard she almost gasped. However, the chair continued, we will require that all future student support sessions be officially recognized through the school's academic enrichment program, with proper oversight and documentation. Mr. Cole, if you're interested in continuing this work, we'd like to discuss creating an official position. Ethan stood slowly. What kind of position? Academic mentor, part-time initially, with potential to expand. You'd have an office, official authorization, and access to resources to support struggling students. The superintendent spoke now, looking directly at him. We should have recognized what you were building sooner. We'd like to correct that mistake. Sophia watched Ethan's face carefully. He looked overwhelmed, uncertain, like someone who'd gotten used to expecting the worst and didn't quite trust this outcome. I'd need to maintain my current job, he said finally, for financial reasons. The position pays enough that you wouldn't. The superintendent glanced at his notes. $45,000 annually to start, benefits included. Something broke in Ethan's expression. Not dramatically, just a small crack that let relief through. Then yes, he said quietly. I accept. The room erupted in applause. Students cheered. Even some of the administrators looked relieved that the situation had resolved without becoming a larger controversy. Sophia met Vanessa's eyes across the room. Her sister nodded once, a small gesture that carried more weight than any words could have. The meeting adjourned. People filed out slowly, many stopping to shake Ethan's hand, to congratulate him, to tell him stories about struggling students who needed exactly what he'd offered. Sophia waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. So, she said, looks like you get to keep starting at 0. Ethan almost smiled. Looks like I get to stop starting at 0. Finally build something that lasts. The sessions continue? Officially recognized, properly supported. He shook his head slightly. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out this was temporary. It's not temporary. You earned this. We earned this. He looked at her seriously. None of this happens without your speech, without you being willing to expose yourself to defend something that mattered. Sophia felt her throat tighten. You taught me how. No, I just gave you permission to stop hiding. Ethan picked up his jacket. I need to tell Lily we're not eating ramen for dinner again this week. But tomorrow morning, same time, same place. You all still need to finish this semester strong. He left, and Sophia stood in the slowly emptying room feeling like something fundamental had shifted. Not just for Ethan, but for all of them. They'd fought for something that mattered and won. Proved that starting at 0 wasn't humiliation. It was the beginning of building something real. Outside, Vanessa waited by the car. That was good work in there, Sophia said. I meant what I said about funding a competing program if they didn't reinstate him. Vanessa unlocked the doors, but I'm glad it didn't come to that. They drove home through quiet streets, the day finally catching up with both of them. You asked me earlier why I cared so much about your grades, Vanessa said suddenly. That was part of it, but the real reason. Vanessa's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I wanted you to have options I never had. I built my company despite struggling every day with something that should be easy. Reading contracts takes me 3 times longer than it should. I still use audio versions of most documents. I've spent my entire career terrified someone will notice and realize I'm a fraud. Sophia stayed quiet, letting her sister talk. So when I watched you coast through school on privilege alone, wasting opportunities I would have killed for. Vanessa's voice roughened. It felt like you were throwing away something I never had the luxury of accessing. That made me cruel, made me punish you for struggling with something different than what I struggled with. You're not a fraud, Sophia said quietly. You're someone who built an empire despite facing obstacles most people never have to navigate. That's what your janitor would say, that starting from disadvantage just means you have to work harder. He's not my janitor, and yeah, that's exactly what he'd say. Sophia looked at her sister's profile, seeing her properly for the first time in years. Maybe you should come to one of the morning sessions. Learn how to start at zero yourself. Vanessa laughed, actual laughter, rough and surprised. I don't think the school board would appreciate having me in their newly official academic program. Probably not, but the offer stands. They pulled into the estate's long driveway, the house rising before them all glass and steel and carefully maintained distance. But somehow it felt less cold now, less like a monument to wealth, and more like a place where 2 people happened to live who were slowly figuring out how to exist in the same space. That night, Sophia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire day in her mind. The speech, the board meeting, Vanessa's unexpected defense, Ethan's face when he accepted the position. It all felt slightly unreal, like something that had happened to someone else, and she'd just witnessed from a distance. Her phone buzzed with a message from Priya. Same time tomorrow? Sophia smiled and typed back. Same time. We have work to finish. Because that was the truth. The board had reinstated Ethan. The sessions had been legitimized. But the actual work, the daily practice of showing up, being honest, pushing through discomfort toward growth, that never ended. That was the point. Starting at zero wasn't a one-time event. It was a continuous practice of stripping away performance and rebuilding from truth. And tomorrow morning, in a dusty library that would now have official recognition and actual resources, 12 students would gather before dawn to continue that work. Only this time, they wouldn't have to hide. The library looked different with official recognition. Someone had cleaned the windows properly for the first time in years. New chairs replaced the scarred ones. A whiteboard that actually erased cleanly hung on the wall where Ethan had been using one with permanent ghost marks from a decade of abandoned lesson plans. The school had even installed better lighting, fluorescent panels that didn't flicker and hum like the old ones had. But the students who gathered there the next morning were the same. Sophia arrived at 6:15 to find Priya already at a table, bent over her notebook with the kind of focused intensity that meant she'd been writing for a while. Luis showed up 5 minutes later with coffee for everyone. A habit he'd started weeks ago that nobody had asked him to continue, but everyone appreciated. Maya arrived with James, both of them arguing good-naturedly about comma splices. 3 freshmen Sophia barely knew filed in quietly, taking seats near the back like they weren't entirely sure they belonged yet. Ethan arrived last, and that was different too. He wasn't pushing a janitorial cart anymore. He carried a worn leather bag that looked like it had survived a previous academic life. And he wore regular clothes instead of his uniform. Jeans, a button-down that had been ironed but not perfectly, shoes that were practical but not institutional. He looked like a teacher again. "Morning," he said, setting his bag down. His eyes scanned the updated room, lingering on the new chairs, the clean windows. They really went all in, didn't they? Vanessa made sure of it, Sophia said. She called the superintendent twice this week about resource allocation. Your sister's terrifying. Yeah, but she's useful when she wants to be. Ethan pulled out a stack of papers and distributed them around the tables. These are your final essay prompts. You've got 3 weeks until semester's end. The prompt is open-ended on purpose. Write about a transformation you've witnessed or experienced. The only requirement is honesty. No performance, no trying to sound profound, just clear thinking expressed clearly. Luis studied his copy. How long? As long as it needs to be to say what you actually mean. No minimum, no maximum, just tight writing that doesn't waste words. Ethan leaned against the desk at the front of the room. Ethan leaned bold. This is your chance to prove you've internalized what we've been working on, not just to me or your English teachers, but to yourselves. Are you grading these? Maya asked. I'm reading them. Your actual teachers are grading them. He almost smiled. But I'll tell you honestly, whether you're hiding or telling the truth. The session continued like all the others had, writing in focused silence, occasional discussions about word choice or structure, Ethan moving between tables offering guidance that was equal parts encouraging and ruthless. But there was a difference now, something subtle in the way the students carried themselves. They weren't hiding anymore. The secrecy that had defined the early sessions had been replaced by something closer to pride. When the first bell rang, everyone packed up slowly, reluctant to leave. Sophia, hang back a second, Ethan said as the others filed out. She waited until the library emptied, then turned to face him. I wanted to thank you, he said, properly, for what you did at that board meeting, for your speech. You already thanked me, Mpieki. Not really. I acknowledged it. That's different. Ethan sat on the edge of a desk. I spent 2 years believing I was done, that I'd lost my chance to do work that mattered, and the best I could hope for was survival. You reminded me that starting over isn't the same as giving up. Sophia felt her throat tighten. You did the same for me. Yeah, I guess we helped each other figure that out. He looked at her seriously. Your final essay. I want you to write about your sister. About what you discovered when you stopped seeing her as the villain and started seeing her as someone who was struggling too. That feels invasive, like I'm exposing her. Then write it in a way that respects her privacy while still being honest about your own experience. The best writing holds that tension, revealing enough truth to matter without betraying the people you're writing about. What if I can't figure out how to do that? Then you'll write a dozen drafts until you do. Ethan stood. You've got 3 weeks. Use them. Sophia nodded and left, already turning the assignment over in her mind. The next few weeks developed a rhythm that felt almost normal. Morning sessions in the library, classes that Sophia actually engaged with instead of drifting through, lunch with Priya and the others where they debated everything from essay structure to whether the cafeteria's pizza counted as actual food. Evenings at home, where she and Vanessa were slowly learning how to exist in the same space without the constant tension that had defined their relationship for years. It wasn't smooth. They still fought, still misunderstood each other, still retreated into their separate corners when conversations got too uncomfortable. But the fights were different now. More honest, less performative, focused on actual issues instead of just testing each other's boundaries. One night over dinner, Vanessa asked about the final essay. What are you writing about? Sophia hesitated. Ethan suggested I write about you. What? Vanessa's fork paused halfway to her mouth. About me specifically, or about our situation? About what I learned when I stopped thinking you were just cruel and started understanding why you did what you did. And what did you learn? That you were terrified of me becoming someone who coasted on privilege without ever developing actual capability. Because that's what you spent your life fighting against. The assumption that you couldn't do the work because you struggled with something that came easily to everyone else. Vanessa set her fork down. That's uncomfortably accurate. Is it okay if I write about it? I won't use details that expose you. I just want to explore what it was like realizing my villain origin story was more complicated than I thought. You thought I was a villain? You cut me off and forced me to ride the bus. What else was I supposed to think? Vanessa almost smiled. Fair point. She was quiet for a moment. Write what you need to write. I trust you to do it honestly without being cruel. That conversation unlocked something in Sophia's approach to the essay. She stopped trying to protect Vanessa or soften the difficult parts. Instead, she wrote about the moment she'd found those reading assessment documents, about connecting dots she'd been deliberately ignoring for years, about the complicated reality of loving someone who hurt you while trying to help you. The drafts came slowly, each one revealing new layers she hadn't noticed before. She showed them to Ethan during morning sessions, and he pushed her toward deeper honesty every time. "This paragraph," he said, marking through an entire section, "you're explaining what you learned. Don't explain. Show the moment of realization. Put us there with you." Sophia rewrote it, then rewrote it again. The process was exhausting and clarifying in equal measure. Meanwhile, the library sessions continued evolving. More students started showing up, drawn by word of mouth and genuine results. Ethan had to start scheduling multiple sessions throughout the week to accommodate everyone. The school administration, eager to capitalize on positive publicity, began featuring the program in newsletters and promotional materials. "This is getting too big," Ethan said one morning after a session that had 23 students crammed into a space designed for 12. "Isn't that good?" Priya asked. "More students getting help? It's good. It's also unsustainable." He rubbed his face, looking tired. "I can't maintain this schedule and give everyone the attention they need. Something has to change." "What if we helped?" Sophia suggested. "The original group, we could mentor newer students. Not grade their work, but give feedback. Share what we've learned." Luis nodded. "I'd do that. Pay forward what you taught us." Ethan considered it. "That could work, but you'd have to be trained properly. This isn't about correcting grammar. It's about pushing people toward honesty without breaking them. That's a skill. Then teach us the skill," Maya said. "We've been learning it by experience anyway. Might as well formalize it." So Ethan started training them. He ran practice sessions where Sophia, Priya, Luis, and a few others took turns giving feedback on sample essays, learning how to identify when writing was hiding versus revealing, how to push without crushing, how to recognize when someone needed encouragement instead of criticism. It was harder than any of them expected. "You're being too gentle," Ethan told Sophia after she gave feedback to one of the freshmen. "You praised the parts that worked but didn't address the parts where she's still performing." "I didn't want to discourage her." "You're not discouraging her by pointing out where she can improve. You're discouraging her by letting her think performance is the same as growth." Sophia tried again, pushing harder. The freshman looked hurt at first, then thoughtful. By the end of the session, she'd rewritten the entire problematic section. "See?" Ethan said quietly. She needed honest feedback more than she needed protection from her own limitations. The training continued over several weeks. Slowly, the original group developed into something like teaching assistants, capable of running smaller feedback sessions while Ethan oversaw the broader structure. The library transformed from a single teacher operation into a student-led community of practice. But not everything was going smoothly elsewhere. Sophia's improved grades had attracted attention from her other teachers, most of it positive. Her English teacher, Mr. Kingston, had pulled her aside after class to tell her the transformation in her work was remarkable. Her history teacher nominated her essay on post-war reconstruction for a school-wide writing award, but there was pushback too. Madison approached her one afternoon between classes, looking uncomfortable. "Can we talk?" Sophia followed her to an empty hallway. "What's up?" "People are saying you're only succeeding now because the janitor's giving you special treatment, that your grades aren't actually earned." "People or you?" Madison flinched. "I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. And what do you think?" "I think—" Madison stopped, choosing her words carefully. "I think you've changed. I don't know if that's good or bad. You're different now. More intense. Less fun." "I was never actually fun. I was just rich enough that people pretended I was." "That's not fair." "Neither was abandoning me the second things got hard." Sophia kept her voice level. "But I'm not angry about it anymore. You did what made sense for you. I'm doing what makes sense for me. Those things don't have to overlap." Madison looked genuinely hurt. "So we're just done? Years of friendship gone? We were never friends. We were two people performing friendship because it was socially convenient." Sophia softened slightly. "I don't hate you, Madison. I just don't need you anymore. And I think that bothers you more than you want to admit." She walked away before Madison could respond, feeling lighter than she expected. That evening, she told Vanessa about the conversation. "That was brutal," Vanessa said. "Was I wrong?" "Oh, no." "No, but being right doesn't always feel good." Vanessa looked up from her tablet. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of you for recognizing the difference between real connection and performance. That's something most people never figure out. Did you ever have real friends, or just business contacts performing friendship?" Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. "I had a friend in college, Sarah Chen. We were roommates, study partners, actually close. Then I started the company and got consumed by it. She tried to stay connected, but I kept canceling plans, putting her off, choosing work over everything else. Eventually, she stopped trying. Do you regret that?" "Every day." Vanessa's voice went rough. "But I didn't know how to be successful and vulnerable simultaneously. Still don't really. It's easier to just eliminate the variables that require emotional maintenance." "That sounds lonely." "It is." Vanessa met her eyes. "Don't make my mistakes, Sophia. Don't sacrifice connection for achievement. They're not actually in competition. That's just a lie ambitious people tell themselves to justify isolation." Sophia thought about that while finishing her essay. She wrote about Vanessa's loneliness, about the cost of building empires while burning bridges, about learning to see her sister as someone who'd survived rather than someone who'd succeeded. The words came easier now, flowing without the constant self-editing that had characterized her early work. 2 weeks before the semester ended, Ethan gathered the original group after a morning session. "I need to tell you something," he said. "The administration offered me a full-time position, director of academic support, actual salary, benefits, the whole thing." Everyone started talking at once, congratulating him, asking questions. He held up a hand. "I haven't accepted yet." The room went quiet. "Why not?" Priya asked. "Because part of the job would be turning this into a formal program with curriculum standards, assessment metrics, documentation requirements, all the institutional machinery that makes programs legitimate, but also strips away what made this work in the first place." Ethan looked at them seriously. "Fun." Ethan looked at them. "I'd have to stop being responsive and start being consistent. Stop meeting students where they are and start following a predetermined structure." "So you're saying no?" Luis asked. "I'm saying I don't know yet." He rubbed his face. "The pay would change my daughter's life. She could do dance classes, summer camps, things I can't currently afford, but I'd be trading the work that actually matters for security that doesn't guarantee impact." Sophia understood the tension in his voice. "What does Lily think?" "She thinks I should take it. She overheard me talking to her grandmother about it and informed me very seriously that dance classes are more important than whatever my job anxiety is about." He almost smiled. 6-year-olds have a way of cutting through complexity. "Take the job, monsieur," Maya said suddenly. "We'll protect what matters." "How?" "Us. By doing what you trained us to do. Keep the morning sessions student-led. You handle the institutional requirements. We maintain the actual work." She looked around at the others. "We know how this works now. We can teach it to new students the way you taught us." "That's a lot of responsibility." "You trusted us to give feedback. Trust us to keep building what we started." Priya leaned forward. "Besides, this was never just about you. You created the space, but we filled it. That doesn't disappear because you take a different title." Ethan looked at them for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "You're sure?" "Take the job," Sophia said. "Let Lily do dance classes. We've got this." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll accept, but if the quality drops, if students start going through the motions instead of doing real work, we'll tell you," Luis interrupted. "And you'll help us fix it, same as always." The decision made, energy in the room shifted towards something lighter. They spent the rest of the session planning how to structure student leadership, which of them would handle which aspects, how to maintain the honesty and rigor that had defined their work from the beginning. Walking to first period afterward, Sophia felt something close to contentment. Not happiness exactly, the world was still complicated and she was still figuring out who she wanted to be, but a sense that the ground under her feet was solid, that she'd built something real that would continue existing beyond her immediate involvement. The final essays came due on a Tuesday morning. Sophia turned hers in to Mr. Kingston, who read the first page immediately and looked up at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "This is about your sister?" "It's about what I learned from our relationship. Is that okay?" "More than okay." He set it aside. "I'm looking forward to reading the rest." That afternoon, Sophia found Vanessa in her home office and handed her a printed copy. "What's this?" "My final essay. You said I could write about you. I wanted you to read it first before my teacher grades it. If there's anything too invasive, I'll revise." Vanessa took the pages, her expression unreadable. "You don't have to let me edit your work. I'm not asking for edits. I'm asking if I crossed a line." "That's fair." Vanessa glanced at the first page. "Give me an hour. Sophia left her alone and tried to focus on other homework, but mostly just stared at textbooks while her mind raced. She'd exposed truths in that essay that they'd never discussed directly. If Vanessa felt betrayed, if she read it as criticism instead of understanding. An hour later, Vanessa appeared in Sophia's doorway holding the essay. "Well?" Sophia asked, her stomach tight. "It's good. Really good." Vanessa's voice was thick. "You didn't soften anything, but you also didn't make me a villain. You saw me. Actually saw me. Is that okay?" "It's uncomfortable as hell, but yes, it's okay." Vanessa sat on the edge of Sophia's bed. "There's a section where you wrote about understanding that my cruelty came from fear. That watching you coast on privilege triggered something in me because I'd spent my life fighting for capabilities you were wasting." That part's true, isn't it? Painfully true." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "Nobody's ever written about me like this. Business profiles focus on my success. They make me sound competent and cold. This makes me sound human? Broken," Vanessa corrected, "but in a way that feels accurate instead of diminishing." They sat in silence for a moment. "I'm going to do something," Vanessa said finally, "and I need you to not make it weird. Okay? I'm going to attend one of Ethan's morning sessions, not to check up on you or insert myself into your space, but because I think I need what he's teaching." Sophia stared at her sister. "Seriously?" "Seriously. I've spent 30 years hiding my struggles behind competence and control. Maybe it's time I learned how to start at zero too." Vanessa stood. "Also, your essay's excellent. Your teacher would be an idiot not to give it top marks." She left before Sophia could respond. The next morning, Vanessa appeared in the library at 6:15, wearing jeans and a sweater Sophia had never seen before, looking decidedly uncertain. The students who were already there did double takes, clearly recognizing the billionaire CEO, but not understanding what she was doing in their space. Ethan handled it smoothly. "Everyone, this is Vanessa. She's here to work on her writing. Same rules apply to everyone. Honesty matters more than polish." Vanessa took a seat near the back and pulled out a notebook. She didn't speak much during the session, just listened and wrote when Ethan gave them prompts. But she stayed the entire time, and when they did the sharing portion where people read their work aloud, she volunteered. Her piece was about building a business while secretly struggling with reading, about the shame of needing audio versions of contracts she was supposed to be reviewing, about the constant fear that someone would discover her weakness and use it to destroy everything she'd built. The vulnerability in her voice was startling. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Then Priya said, "That took courage." "It took desperation," Vanessa corrected. "I'm tired of pretending I'm something I'm not." "That's where everyone starts here," Louise said. "Welcome to starting at zero." Vanessa smiled, small, uncertain, but real. "Thanks." She came back the next morning, and the morning after that. Within a week, she was a regular presence, working on her writing with the same intensity she brought to everything else. The students adjusted quickly, treating her like anyone else in the space, pushing back on her word choices, calling out when she hid behind corporate language, celebrating when she wrote something genuinely revealing. Sophia watched her sister transform in small increments, shedding layers of performance she'd maintained for decades. It was uncomfortable to witness, like watching someone remove armor they'd worn so long it had fused with their skin. But it was also hopeful in a way Sophia hadn't expected. One morning, Vanessa read a piece about her friend Sarah from college. the relationship she'd sacrificed for her career. Her voice cracked halfway through. She pushed through anyway, finishing the essay while her hands shook slightly. When she looked up, several students were wiping their eyes. "That destroyed me," Maya said quietly. "The part about choosing work over connection because you thought you had to pick one." D-E-S. "I did have to pick one," Vanessa said. "That's what I believed. I'm starting to think I was wrong." "Starting to think or knowing?" Ethan asked gently. Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "Knowing. I was wrong." After the session, Sophia walked with her sister toward the parking lot. "That was hard for you, Saade," Sophia said. "Everything about this is hard. But also, Vanessa stopped walking. "I haven't felt this honest in years. Maybe ever. It's terrifying and clarifying simultaneously." "That's kind of the point. I'm beginning to understand that." Vanessa checked her watch. "I have a board meeting in an hour. I need to switch back to the version of myself that runs a company." "Well, what if you didn't switch? What if you brought this version to the board meeting? They'd eat me alive. Or they'd respect you more for being real." Sophia shrugged. "Worth experimenting with." Vanessa looked genuinely uncertain, which was so unusual that Sophia almost laughed. Her sister, who commanded boardrooms full of investors without flinching, was nervous about being vulnerable in a professional setting. "I'll think about it," Vanessa said finally. The semester wound toward its end. Final exams, last essays, the exhausted countdown that characterized every academic year. Sophia's grades had climbed steadily. Not perfect, not effortless, but solidly earned through actual work. She'd gotten an A- on her final essay, with comments from Mr. Kingston that made her chest tight with something close to pride. More importantly, she'd built something that would continue existing after she graduated. The morning sessions were now fully integrated into Ridgeview's structure, with student leadership ensuring they maintained their character even as they grew. Ethan had accepted the director position and was already implementing changes that made academic support more accessible to struggling students throughout the school. And Sophia had her sister back. Not the cold, distant version who'd managed her like a business problem, but someone real who was learning alongside her how to exist without armor. The last morning session of the semester felt bittersweet. Everyone showed up, including several students who'd graduated to just having regular class performance but wanted to mark the moment. Ethan brought coffee and donuts, which felt ceremonial. "This isn't goodbye," he said, as they gathered around tables. "Most of you will be back next semester, but it is an ending of sorts. The ending of this specific chapter." "Speech!" someone called out, and others joined in. Ethan held up his hands. "No speeches. But I will say this. You all proved something I needed to believe again. That starting at zero isn't failure, it's courage. And that the most important work happens when you stop hiding behind what looks good and start building what actually matters." He looked at Sophia specifically. "Some of you taught me that lesson as much as I taught you. Thank you for that." They worked through one final session, writing and sharing and offering each other the kind of honest feedback that had become second nature. When the bell rang, no one moved immediately. They sat in the space they'd created together, reluctant to let it become just memory. Finally, Priya stood. "Same time next semester?" "Same time," everyone echoed. They filed out slowly, and Sophia lingered behind to help Ethan clean up. "You good?" he asked as they stacked chairs. "Yeah, just processing. Your essay about Vanessa, Kingston showed it to me. Asked if I thought you'd been influenced too much by our sessions." Ethan almost smiled. "I told him you'd finally learned how to think for yourself, and that was exactly the point." "What did he say?" "That he wished more students had that kind of breakthrough." Ethan picked up his bag. "You did good work this semester, Sophia. Not just in writing, but in understanding what matters. That's harder than it sounds. I had a good teacher. You had a teacher who showed up. You did the actual work." He headed toward the door. "See you next semester?" "See you next semester." Sophia walked to first period feeling like she'd crossed some invisible finish line. Not the end of the race, but the completion of one significant leg. She'd started the semester broken and humiliated, stripped of every protection she'd relied on. She was ending it stronger, clearer, more herself than she'd ever been. That afternoon, she got a text from Vanessa. "Dinner tonight. I'm cooking." "Don't panic. I'm ordering in, but we're eating together like an actual family." Sophia smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." She thought about everything that had changed in a few short months. How starting at zero had felt like punishment at first, then transformation, then finally just the necessary work of becoming real. How the people who'd helped her get there, Ethan, Priya, the whole messy community in that library, had been doing their own work simultaneously. And how her sister, the billionaire CEO, who'd seemed untouchable and cold, had turned out to be just another person trying to figure out how to exist honestly in a world that rewarded performance over truth. The bus ride home felt routine now. Not humiliating, not beneath her, just how she got from one place to another. She watched the city pass by through scratched windows and thought about next semester, about continuing the work they'd started, about the essays still waiting to be written and the students still learning how to find their voices. Starting at zero wasn't a one-time event. It was a practice. Something you returned to whenever life got too polished, too performed, too far from what actually mattered. And Sophia was finally beginning to understand that was exactly the point. Summer arrived with the kind of heat that made the city shimmer, and everyone who could afford to left for somewhere cooler. The Hale estate sat quiet in the afternoons, its glass walls reflecting sunlight until the whole structure looked like it might melt. But inside, things had shifted in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. Sophia spent most of June working at her uncle's law firm downtown, a summer internship Vanessa had arranged but made clear she'd have to earn her keep at. The work was boring, filing documents, organizing case files, making coffee runs for associates who barely acknowledged her existence. But she showed up on time every day, took the bus both ways, and didn't complain even when the air conditioning broke during a heat wave and everyone was miserable. On her lunch breaks, she'd sit in the small park across from the office building and write. Not for any class or assignment, just because the practice had become part of how she processed the world now. She wrote about the associates who treated her like furniture, about the paralegal who'd asked if she was the Hale girl, with a tone that made it sound like an accusation, about learning that most work was unglamorous and repetitive, and you did it anyway because that's what adults did. Vanessa had started doing the same thing. She'd show Sophia pages she'd written about board meetings, difficult negotiations, the exhausting performance of running a company while carrying invisible struggles. They'd sit at the dinner table trading notebooks, offering feedback with the same honesty Ethan had taught them both. "This section feels safe," Sophia said one evening, marking through a paragraph in Vanessa's latest piece. "You're describing the meeting, but not how it made you feel." "It made me feel tired. That's not interesting." "Why did it make you tired specifically? What about that meeting drained you in a way other meetings don't?" Vanessa thought about it. "Because I had to read a contract in front of everyone and pretend it was easy. Took me twice as long as it should have." I could feel them getting impatient. Write that. The specific feeling of performing competence while struggling. That's exposing. That's the point. Vanessa rewrote the section, and it was better. More honest. Sophia watched her sister learning the same lessons she'd learned in that library, just later and with higher stakes. They were becoming something neither of them had expected. Actual family instead of two people who happened to share an address. Mid-July, Ethan called a reunion meeting for everyone who'd participated in the morning sessions. Not at school, but at a community center in a neighborhood that hadn't seen significant investment in decades. The building was old but maintained, the kind of place that survived on volunteer work and grant money. Sophia arrived to find 23 students already gathered, plus a few new faces she didn't recognize. "Who are they?" she asked Priya. "Students from other schools. Word spread about what we built. They want to start similar programs." Priya looked simultaneously proud and overwhelmed. "Ethan thought we could share what we learned." Ethan stood at the front of the room looking different again. More rested, less worn down by invisible weight. His daughter Lily sat in the corner drawing elaborate dinosaur scenes, occasionally looking up to monitor her father with the serious attention of a 6-year-old who'd learned early that adults needed watching. "Thanks for coming," Ethan began when everyone settled. "I know summer's supposed to be a break, but I wanted to bring everyone together for 2 reasons. First, to introduce you to students from Lincoln Heights and Riverside Academy who are interested in building writing communities at their schools. Second, to talk about what we're doing next semester and how we keep this growing without losing what made it work." A girl from Lincoln Heights raised her hand. How did you get your administration to support this? Ours barely funds art programs. They're not going to create a whole new position for writing support. Oh, we didn't ask for permission initially, Louise said. We just started showing up and doing the work. By the time administration noticed, we had results they couldn't ignore. But you had resources, another student pointed out. Ridgeview's wealthy. Our school's Title I. Different reality. Yes, resources help, Sophia said, but the core work doesn't require funding. It requires showing up and being honest with each other. That's free. They spent 2 hours sharing strategies, discussing obstacles, problem-solving how to adapt their model to different contexts. The students from other schools took notes, asked follow-up questions, pushed back when something didn't make sense for their situation. It felt less like teaching and more like collaborative building. Afterward, Sophia lingered while people filtered out. Ethan was packing up materials, Lily helping by organizing markers into rainbow order. That went well, Sophia said, better than I expected. Ethan glanced at his daughter. Lily, go grab our stuff from the car. I'll be there in a minute. Lily scrambled out, her dinosaur notebook clutched under one arm. She seems happy, Sophia observed. She is. Dance classes started last week. She's terrible at it, but loves it anyway. Ethan smiled. Turns out financial stability makes parenting significantly easier. Who knew? You seem different too. Less exhausted? I'm sleeping more than 4 hours a night for the first time in years. That helps. He sat on the edge of a table. But it's more than that. I spent so long in survival mode that I forgot what building towards something felt like. This work, training you all to carry it forward, watching it spread, that's what I got into teaching for originally. Before everything fell apart. Before I let everything fall apart, Ethan corrected. I blamed circumstance for a long time. My wife's death, the grief, the systems that failed me, all of that was real. But I also made choices that made things worse. Isolated myself, stopped asking for help, decided I had to carry everything alone. Sophia thought about that. Is that what you'd tell someone just starting at zero? That isolation makes it harder? I tell them that starting over is brutal and necessary, and you can't do it alone, even though everything in you wants to hide until you've rebuilt enough to look presentable. He stood. But mostly, I tell them it's worth it, that the person you become on the other side is more real than the person you were before everything broke. Lily burst back through the door. Dad, there's a dog outside and he looks lost. We're not adopting a lost dog. But he needs help. Ethan sighed and followed his daughter outside. Sophia watched them go, thinking about everything he'd said. About isolation and rebuilding and the person you became when you stopped performing and started existing honestly. She pulled out her phone and texted Vanessa. Want to get dinner somewhere that's not our house? Actual restaurant with other people around? The response came quickly. Yes. Pick the place. They met at a small Italian restaurant in a neighborhood neither of them usually visited, the kind of place where the menu was handwritten and the owner knew everyone's names. Vanessa looked out of place in her business casual, but she'd come straight from the office and hadn't bothered changing. Over pasta that was better than it had any right to be, they talked about work, summer plans, the community meeting earlier. Easy conversation that felt foreign because they'd spent so many years not having it. I'm thinking about hiring Ethan as a consultant, Vanessa said between bites. Sophia blinked. For what? Corporate communication training. Teaching executives how to write clearly and present honestly instead of hiding behind jargon. Vanessa set her fork down. Vanessa set. Half my meetings are people performing competence while saying nothing substantive. Maybe if they learned to communicate the way he taught you, we'd waste less time. You think executives want to learn vulnerability from a guy who lost everything? I think they need to. Most of them are terrified of being exposed as frauds. Same as I was. Same as you were. Vanessa leaned back. Besides, his methods work. You're proof of that. I'm not sure corporate executives are ready for someone telling them their writing is performative nonsense. Then they'll learn or stay mediocre. Either way, I'm making the offer. Vanessa paused. I wanted to ask you something about next semester. What about it? Yes. I'd like to keep attending the morning sessions, not as a board member or donor or anything official, just as someone working on their writing. She looked genuinely uncertain. Would that be weird? Me being there while you're trying to mentor new students? Sophia considered it. 6 months ago, the idea of her sister invading her space would have felt suffocating. Now it just felt like Vanessa was finally participating in something that mattered, instead of just funding it from a distance. It's not weird, Sophia said, but you have to follow the same rules as everyone else. No special treatment because you're you. I wouldn't want special treatment. Good, because Priya will absolutely call you out if you hide behind corporate language. She's ruthless. Vanessa smiled. I've noticed. It's refreshing. They finished dinner and walked back to where they'd parked, the evening cooling down to something almost comfortable. City sounds surrounded them. Traffic, distant music, people laughing from a bar patio, normal sounds from a normal summer night. I'm sorry, Vanessa said suddenly, for how I handled everything at the beginning of the year, cutting you off without explanation, humiliating you publicly. I convinced myself it was necessary, but it was also cruel. Badishki mushkit. It was necessary, Sophia said. I needed to break before I could rebuild. You just didn't explain that's what you were doing. I didn't know that's what I was doing. I was angry and scared and acting from that instead of thinking clearly. Vanessa stopped walking. I saw you coasting and it triggered every fear I've spent my life running from, that I'd be exposed as incompetent, that people would realize I'd been faking it, that I'd lose everything I built. What? You're not faking it. You built something real. So did you. And I almost destroyed that by trying to force you into a shape that made sense to me. Vanessa's voice went rough. I'm still learning how to be a person instead of just a CEO. It's harder than running a company. Yeah, but you're doing it anyway. Sophia bumped her sister's shoulder. That counts for something. They drove home separately but arrived at the same time, parking in the circular driveway that suddenly felt less like a monument to wealth and more like just where they happened to live. Inside, the house was dark and cool and quiet. They said goodnight and went to their separate rooms, but the distance felt chosen rather than enforced. Sophia lay in bed scrolling through messages from the group. Priya had started a thread about lesson plans for next semester. Luis was asking about structure. Maya wanted to know if they should limit enrollment or let everyone who wanted in attend. The conversation was practical and enthusiastic and completely student-driven. Sophia typed a response about keeping enrollment manageable, but creating a waitlist system so everyone got a chance eventually. Then she set her phone aside and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how much had changed since that morning in early spring when Vanessa had taken everything away. She'd been so angry then, so humiliated, so certain her life was ending when really it was just beginning to be honest. August brought preparation for the new school year. Sophia and the other student leaders met multiple times to organize the morning sessions, create schedules, develop a basic framework that maintained the spirit of what Ethan had built while allowing for growth. They decided on a mentorship model where experienced students would work with small groups of new participants, offering feedback and guidance under Ethan's oversight. We need to be careful, Priya said during one planning meeting. Schools are watching now. If we succeed, they'll try to formalize it to death. If we fail, they'll use it as proof student-led programs don't work. So we don't fail, James said simply. That's not how failure works. It just happens sometimes. Then we fail forward, Sophia said. Make mistakes, learn from them, adjust. That's what Ethan taught us. Wo, bo, mantam. They finalized plans and sent them to Ethan for review. He came back with minor suggestions, but mostly approved everything. The program was becoming theirs in a way that felt both terrifying and right. The week before school started, Sophia was sorting through her closet when Vanessa knocked on her door. Can I come in? It's your house. It's our house, Vanessa corrected, entering. She was holding a folder. I wanted to show you something. Sophia sat on her bed. What is it? An essay I wrote. For myself, not for the morning sessions. About Sarah Chen, my college friend. Vanessa handed over the folder. I sent it to her yesterday. This is her response. Sophia opened the folder and found a printed email. The message was long, emotional, honest about hurt and disappointment and the years of silence between them. But it ended with an invitation to meet for coffee next time Vanessa was in Boston. You're going to see her? I'm flying out next weekend. Vanessa sat in Sophia's desk chair. I don't know if we can rebuild what we had, but I need to try. I've spent too long letting work consume everything. If I can't make space for actual connection, then what's the point of any of this success? Sophia looked at her sister, really looked, and saw someone who was scared but moving forward anyway. I'm proud of you. Don't. I'm terrified I'll get there and realize we have nothing in common anymore. That's possible, but showing up anyway is what matters. When did you get wise? When you forced me to ride the bus and figure out who I was without money protecting me. Sophia handed the folder back. Turns out humiliation builds character. Who knew? Vanessa almost laughed. I'm stealing that for my corporate communication pitch to Ethan. The first day of school arrived with the anxious energy that always accompanied new beginnings. Sophia woke before her alarm, dressed in clothes that were nice but not expensive, and took the bus to Ridgeview feeling like she was heading somewhere that mattered, instead of just going through motions. The library was full by 6:20. Familiar faces mixed with new ones. Freshmen who looked terrified, sophomores who'd heard about the program and decided to try it, even 2 seniors who'd been coasting for 3 years and suddenly realized they needed help. Sophia counted 32 students crammed into a space designed for 20. Ethan stood at the front looking calm despite the chaos. Welcome. For those who are new, this is a writing community focused on honesty over performance. We don't grade here. We push each other toward clarity and truth. If that sounds like something you're interested in, stay. If you just need an easy A, leave now and save us all time. Nobody left. Good. Then let's start with the basic question. Who are you when nobody's watching? The room went quiet. Sophia watched new students shift uncomfortably while veterans pulled out notebooks and started writing. This was always the hardest part, the initial confrontation with honesty. But it was also where everything began. Vanessa slipped in quietly and took a seat in the back. A few students noticed and did double takes, but Ethan handled it smoothly. Vanessa's here to work on her writing same as everyone else. Same rules apply. He turned back to the group. You've got 20 minutes. Write something true. Then we'll share. The room filled with the sound of pens moving across paper. Sophia wrote about summer, about working a boring job and learning that most of life was unglamorous and you showed up anyway. About watching her sister attempt reconnection with someone she'd hurt years ago. About the strange satisfaction of building something that would outlast your immediate participation. When time was up, Ethan called for volunteers. A freshman named Marcus raised his hand hesitantly. I wrote about my dad, he said, voice shaking slightly. About how he works 2 jobs so I can go here and I'm terrified I'll fail and waste his sacrifice. Read it, Ethan said gently. Marcus read. His piece was rough, unpolished, but devastatingly honest about pressure and fear and the weight of other people's dreams. When he finished, several students were nodding. That's real, Louise said. The part about feeling like you're living someone else's life? That hit hard. They spent the rest of the session sharing and responding, creating the same space of vulnerable honesty that had defined the program from the beginning. By the time the first bell rang, the nervous energy had transformed into something more solid. New students left looking thoughtful rather than terrified. Veterans lingered to help clean up and answer questions. That went well, Priya said to Sophia as they packed their bags. Better than expected. I thought we'd lose half of them after Ethan's opening question. The ones who stay are the ones ready to do real work. Priya glanced toward the back where Vanessa was talking quietly with Ethan about something. Your sister's really committed to this, huh? Seems like it. That's good. Means she's not just performing support. She's actually participating. Sophia watched Vanessa accept feedback from Ethan about something she'd written, her posture tense but receptive. It was strange seeing her powerful sister in student mode, accepting guidance instead of giving orders. But it was also humanizing in a way that felt important. The semester developed its rhythm quickly. Morning sessions became routine again. Sophia balanced mentoring newer students with her own coursework, which was significantly easier now that she'd internalized how to actually think instead of just perform thinking. Her grades stayed solid. Not perfect, she still struggled with math, still sometimes turned in essays that needed revision, but earned through genuine effort. The program continued growing. By October, they'd expanded to 3 separate session times to accommodate everyone interested. Student leaders took turns facilitating, with Ethan rotating between groups to offer guidance. The work was exhausting, but satisfying in a way that felt sustainable. One morning in late October, Sophia was working with a group of freshmen when Madison appeared in the doorway. She looked uncomfortable, holding a notebook like a shield. "Is this the writing thing?" she asked. Sophia stood. "Yeah, you interested?" "Maybe. I don't know." Madison shifted her weight. "My grades are fine, but I read your essay from last semester. The one about your sister. And it made me realize I don't actually know how to say anything true. I just know how to say things that make people like me. That's as good a reason as any to be here." Sophia gestured to an empty chair. "Sit. We're working on personal essays. First draft, no pressure, just honesty." Madison sat hesitantly. Sophia gave her the same prompt Ethan had given her months ago. Write about who you are when nobody's watching. Madison stared at the blank page for a long time before starting to write. After the session, she approached Sophia alone. "That was hard," Madison said. "It's supposed to be. I wrote about being afraid people only like me because I'm agreeable, that I don't actually have opinions, just positions I think will make others comfortable." Madison looked genuinely distressed. "Is that pathetic? It's honest. That's what matters here. I don't know if I can do this. Be this vulnerable with people who might use it against me." "Then don't. Nobody's forcing you." Sophia softened slightly. "But I'll tell you what Ethan told me. Hiding behind what looks good feels safe, but it also keeps you from becoming real. Your choice which one you want." Madison nodded slowly and left without committing either way. But she came back the next morning, and the morning after that. Within 2 weeks, she was sharing work that made her cry and accepting feedback that clearly hurt. It was uncomfortable watching someone you'd written off struggle toward growth, but it was also proof that people could change if they wanted it badly enough. November brought unexpected complications. The school board, thrilled by positive press about the writing program, decided to feature it in a district-wide presentation about innovative education. They wanted student leaders to present at a conference, speak to administrators from other schools, basically become the public face of something that had started as a quiet rebellion. "This is exactly what we were afraid of," Priya said during an emergency meeting. "They're going to formalize it to death, turn it into a replicable model that strips away everything that makes it work." "So we don't let them," Louise said. "How do we stop a school board from doing what they want?" "By controlling the narrative," Sophia said. "They want us to present? Fine. We'll present the truth. That this works because it's student-led, because we maintain high standards without institutional machinery, because we're allowed to fail and adjust. We'll make it clear that trying to standardize it will kill it." They prepared a presentation that was brutally honest about what made the program successful: the lack of formal assessment, the emphasis on peer feedback over teacher evaluation, the willingness to kick out students who weren't serious. It wasn't what the board wanted to hear, but it was the truth. The conference happened in early December. Sophia stood on a stage in front of 200 administrators and delivered their presentation without softening anything. Priya backed her up with data. Louise shared testimonials from students whose grades had improved dramatically. James explained their mentorship model and why formal teacher oversight would destroy it. The reaction was mixed. Some administrators looked intrigued. Others looked uncomfortable at the implication that student-led programs could outperform traditional structures. The board members who'd arranged the presentation looked like they regretted the decision. During the Q&A, a superintendent from a neighboring district asked, "How do you maintain quality without formal oversight?" "What? We maintain quality by having higher standards than formal oversight does," Sophia said. "We expect honesty and growth. Traditional grading systems expect competence and completion. Those aren't the same thing. But without certified teachers, we have a certified teacher. He oversees us. But the actual work happens peer-to-peer because that's where students are most honest. We're not trying to impress each other with performance. We're trying to help each other get better. The superintendent looked skeptical but wrote something down. After the presentation, several administrators approached them with genuine interest. A few wanted to implement similar programs. Others wanted to hire Ethan as a consultant. The attention was flattering and overwhelming in equal measure. That was intense, Priya said once they escaped to an empty hallway. At least we didn't lie about what makes it work, Louise said. Yeah, but now everyone's watching. If we fail, it becomes proof that student-led programs don't scale. James looked worried. That's a lot of pressure. Then we don't fail, Sophia said, echoing his words from months ago. We keep doing what works, and if it stops working, we adjust. Same as always. They returned to school the next day and kept going. The sessions continued without interruption. Students kept showing up, kept writing, kept pushing each other toward honesty. The outside attention faded back to background noise. Winter break arrived, and Sophia spent it catching up on sleep and working on a personal essay about the past year. Not for any class, just for herself. She wrote about transformation and humiliation and the strange alchemy that turned one into the other. About learning that starting at zero was permission rather than punishment. About watching her sister do the same work she'd done, just with higher stakes and more to lose. Vanessa flew to Boston twice that month to see Sarah. The first visit was awkward, stilted, full of old wounds that hadn't quite healed. The second was better. They didn't magically become close friends again, but they started building towards something real instead of just mourning what they'd lost. It's strange, Vanessa told Sophia over dinner one night. Trying to rebuild a friendship after years of absence. We have to relearn each other. Is it worth it? I don't know yet, but I'm glad I'm trying. Vanessa set down her fork. I wanted to tell you something. I hired Ethan as a consultant. He's running communication workshops for my executive team starting next month. How'd you convince them to agree to that? I made it mandatory. Told them if they wanted to keep working for me, they needed to learn how to communicate honestly instead of hiding behind corporate speak. Vanessa almost smiled. They were not thrilled. I bet Ethan was. Mom. He negotiated his rate up by 30% and insisted on bringing Lily to the first session, so everyone understood he was a parent first, consultant second. I respected that. Sophia laughed. This is going to be a disaster. Probably. But it'll be an interesting disaster. Spring semester started with unexpected momentum. The morning sessions were so full they had to create a formal waitlist system. Students from other schools started visiting to observe and learn. Ethan's workshops with Vanessa's executive team were apparently causing minor chaos, but also producing noticeably better communication in board meetings. And Sophia, surrounded by the community she'd helped build, felt something she hadn't experienced before. The satisfaction of creating something that mattered beyond her immediate benefit. One morning in March, she was working with a group of freshmen when Ethan pulled her aside. I got offered a position at Ridgeview College, he said. Teaching composition, part-time, but actual college teaching again. Sophia's heart jumped. That's incredible. Are you taking it? I don't know. It would mean less time here, less availability for the morning sessions. He looked genuinely conflicted. Part of me wants to return to the career I lost, but part of me knows this work is more important. Why can't you do both? Time, mostly. Energy. Lily's activities are increasing. I'm barely managing what I've got now. So we adjust, Sophia said. You've trained us to run this. Take the college position. We'll handle the high school program. You can still advise, still check in, but you don't have to carry the whole operation anymore. You're sure you're ready for that? No, but that's never stopped us before. Ethan studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I'll accept. But you call me if anything starts falling apart. Deal. He took the position. The morning sessions continued without major disruption. Student leaders stepped up, took ownership, made decisions that weren't always perfect but were always made with intention. The program evolved, adapted, kept growing. In April, Sophia received an acceptance letter from a competitive writing program at a university 3 hours away. The scholarship was substantial but not complete. She'd still need to cover some costs. She brought the letter to Vanessa. "This is a good program," Vanessa said, reading through the details. "But it's going to be expensive even with the scholarship. I know I can get loans, work part-time, or I could help cover what the scholarship doesn't." Sophia hesitated. "I thought we were doing the whole earn everything yourself thing." "We were. You did. You rebuilt yourself without my money protecting you. This isn't protection, it's investment in something you've proven you're serious about." Vanessa set the letter down. "But it's your choice. If you want to do it entirely on your own, I respect that." Sophia thought about it. About the difference between accepting help you hadn't earned versus accepting support for work you'd already done. About pride versus practicality. "I'll accept help with tuition," she said finally. "But I'm covering living expenses myself. I need to know I can survive independently." "Fair enough." They shook on it like a business deal, which felt appropriately formal for two people who were still learning how to be family. The final morning session of the year happened in late May. Sophia stood in the library that had started everything and looked around at faces she recognized. Students she'd watched transform from terrified freshmen into confident writers who knew how to think clearly and express themselves honestly. "This is weird," Priya said beside her. "Endings always are." "It's not really an ending. We're just moving to the next thing. You're leaving, going to college. That changes things. The program doesn't need me anymore. It's bigger than any individual person now." Sophia gestured at the students filling the room. "That was always the point. Build something sustainable that doesn't depend on whoever started it." Ethan appeared, Lily trailing behind him with her dinosaur notebook. "Everyone ready?" "Ochoiki." "Nchini." They gathered for one final session. No formal structure, no specific prompts, just open sharing about what the year had meant to them. Students read pieces about growth and failure and the strange comfort of a space where honesty mattered more than polish. New members talked about discovering their voices. Veterans reflected on how far they'd come since those first terrified attempts at vulnerable writing. When Sophia's turn came, she stood and read an essay she'd written the night before about transformation and community and the difference between starting at zero because life forced you there versus choosing to return there regularly because that's where real growth happened. Her voice stayed steady. The words landed clearly. When she finished, the room stayed quiet for a moment before erupting in applause. Afterward, students filtered out slowly, exchanging contact information, promising to stay connected. Sophia helped Ethan clean up, neither of them saying much because there wasn't much that needed saying. "You did good work this year," Ethan said finally. "We all did." "Yeah, but you took what I taught you and built something bigger than what I started with. That matters." He picked up his bag. "Stay in touch from college. Let me know how the writing program goes. You're not getting rid of me that easily. I'll be back for breaks." "Good, because someone's got to keep these sessions honest when I'm not around." They walked out together into late spring sunshine. The parking lot was full of students heading home for summer, excited voices carrying across pavement that shimmered with heat. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing music too loud. Life continuing in all its messy, imperfect glory. Sophia found Vanessa waiting by her car. "How was the last session?" Vanessa asked. "Good. Sad. The right kind of both." Sophia tossed her bag in the back seat. "Ready to go?" They drove home together, the route familiar enough that neither of them needed to pay close attention. The city passed by outside, buildings and billboards and people living their private struggles invisibly. All of them starting at zero in their own ways, rebuilding from their own catastrophes, learning the same lessons about honesty and vulnerability that Sophia had discovered in a dusty library before dawn. "I'm proud of you," Vanessa said as they pulled into the driveway. "For everything you built this year, for who you became." "I'm proud of you too, for learning to be vulnerable. That's harder when you've got more to lose." "Everything's harder when you've got more to lose, but it's also more worth doing." They sat in the parked car for a moment, neither quite ready to go inside and let the day become just memory. "What you said in your speech about starting at zero," Vanessa said, "about it being freedom instead of humiliation. I think about that a lot." "Yeah?" "Yeah, because I spent 30 years building walls to protect myself from being exposed. And what I've learned this year is that those walls didn't protect me. They just isolated me, kept me from connecting with anyone real." Vanessa's voice went rough. "Starting at zero meant tearing down walls I thought I needed. Turned out I didn't. I just needed courage to exist without them. Sophia reached over and squeezed her sister's hand. We both did. We just figured it out together. They went inside, and the house that had once felt cold and empty now just felt like home. Not perfect, not transformed into some idealized version of itself, but real in a way it hadn't been before. That summer, Sophia worked 2 jobs to save money for college expenses. She wrote every morning before work, maintaining the practice that had become essential to how she processed the world. She stayed in touch with the group, offering feedback on essays they sent her, checking in about how the program was developing for next year. In August, Vanessa drove her to college. They packed Sophia's belongings into the car. Not much, just clothes and books, and the notebooks she'd filled over the past year documenting her transformation. The drive took 3 hours through countryside that gradually shifted from familiar to new. When they reached campus, Vanessa helped her move into the dorm room, meeting her roommate and making awkward small talk that neither of them enjoyed but both endured because that's what the moment required. As Vanessa prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "You're going to be fine here," she said. "I know. And if you're not, call me. Not for money, just to talk." "I will." Vanessa nodded and left before either of them could get emotional about it. Sophia stood in her new room surrounded by unpacked boxes and thought about everything that had led here. The humiliation of having her privilege stripped away. The exhaustion of rebuilding from nothing. The slow discovery that starting at zero wasn't punishment. It was permission to become real. Her phone buzzed with a message from Priya. "First session tomorrow morning. Wish us luck." Sophia smiled and typed back. "You don't need luck. You've got honesty. That's better." She unpacked slowly, arranging her space in a way that felt comfortable without trying to be impressive. Outside, other students were arriving, parents helping them move in, everyone vibrating with the anxious energy of new beginnings. Sophia pulled out her notebook and started writing. Not about what she expected college to be like, not about fear or excitement or any of the obvious things, just about the moment itself, standing in a new space with nothing to protect her except the person she'd built over the past year. She wrote about her sister learning to be vulnerable, about Ethan returning to teaching while staying connected to the work that had saved him, about a library full of students who'd discovered that honesty mattered more than performance. She wrote about starting at zero and what came after, not smooth success or easy transformation, but the messy, difficult, necessary work of existing without armor, of letting people see you struggling instead of just succeeding, of building connection through shared vulnerability instead of projected competence. The words flowed easily now, no longer fought for but earned through practice and repetition. She'd learned what Ethan had tried to teach her from the beginning, that writing wasn't about sounding smart. It was about knowing what you believed and having the courage to say it honestly. Somewhere across campus, orientation activities were starting. Sophia would join them eventually. But for now, she sat in her new room writing about the past year, documenting the transformation that had started with humiliation and ended with something like wisdom. Not perfect wisdom, not complete understanding, just the hard-won knowledge that you couldn't become real without first admitting how much you'd been performing. That starting at zero was the only way to build something that would last. That vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the foundation everything real got built on. She finished writing and closed her notebook, ready for whatever came next. Because that's what starting at zero had taught her. That you could lose everything and rebuild stronger. That you could be broken and become more honest because of it. That the person you thought you needed to be was usually just armor protecting you from discovering who you actually were. And sometimes, when you were brave enough to strip that armor away and start from nothing, you discovered that nothing was actually everything you needed.